So this is Trump talking about it himself.
So we've done a great job. Elon knew that. Elon endorsed me very strongly. He actually went up and campaigned for me. I think I would have won. Susie would say I would have won Pennsylvania easily anyway, even if the governor ran, the real governor, not the governor from Minnesota, who's I mean, he's a sick puppy, that guy. That poor guy, feels sorry for him. But they made a bad choice with him. But if you pick Shapiro or anybody else, I spoke to him recently about his, his house being set on fire, which was terrible.
That was bad.
But if they picked him, I would have won Pennsylvania. I won by a lot. But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate, because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have all. We want to be able to sell.
Elon posted that's a lie on X. Let me just go through this first. I don't know.
When that was cut, and Congress,
I'm not sure. Like, how could I know what he knew?
Wanted to cut it. He became a little bit different, and I can understand that. But he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody, and he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape. He said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next.
Oh, jeez. Okay, all right, let's go.
Actually, the Epstein files thing has already been like, I mean, people already knew of Trump and the Epstein Island shit, but Elon was like, yeah, by the way, he's on the list.
Should people not take him seriously about spending now? He's saying this is all sour grapes.
No, he worked hard and he did a good job. And I'll be honest, I think he misses the place. I think he got out there and all of a sudden he wasn't in this beautiful Oval Office, and he's got nice offices too.
Oh God. I think Trump thinks that Trump is assuming that Elon is crashing out about this, but he's just going to get over it in, like a month, and it's just, going to be business as usual. That's what it seems like to me. Yeah.
But there's something about this when I was telling the chancellor.
I don't think he's really taking it that
people
seriously.
People come in here, even from Germany. They come in and they walk into the Oval Office, and it's just a special place. It's, World War I, it started and it ended here, and World War II, and so many other things. Everything big comes right from this beautiful space. It's now much more beautiful than it was 6 months ago. A lot of good things are happening in this room, and I'll tell you, he's not the first. People leave my administration and they love us, and then at some point they miss it so badly, and some of them embrace it and some of them actually become hostile.
Is that right?
I don't know what it is. It's sort of Trump derangement syndrome, I guess they call it, but we have it with others too. They leave, and they wake up in the morning and the glamour's gone, the whole world is different, and they become hostile. I don't know what it is. Someday you'll write a book about it and you'll let us know. Yeah.
Okay, so that's basically what Trump said. And then Elon said, without me, Trump would have lost the election. The Democrats would control the House, and the Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude. I don't understand, I don't know who's right and who's wrong with this. I have no idea. Elon Musk and Trump, no one predicted this would have happened. No one could have predicted that Elon Musk and Trump would eventually have a falling out and a crash out.
It was actually predicted multiple times.
This is a surprise, I think, to everyone, okay? And so let's go ahead and take a look at it, and we'll see why. Elon Musk's claim to support was pivotal in Donald Trump's 2024 election win, sparking a public dispute. So was Elon Musk's support of Trump very important? The main thing that was important actually wasn't Elon Musk supporting Trump, it was Elon Musk buying Twitter. This is something that I can say with certainty. If Elon did not buy Twitter, I do not think Trump would be the president right now. I actually think that buying Twitter was a timeline-changing event. It was a genuine 100% timeline-altering event. And whether Elon supporting Trump was what changed it, or whether him giving the money changed it, I think that's harder to say. But I think that buying Twitter, and like again, also by the way, he would have never supported Trump, and he would have never given him the money if he didn't buy Twitter, right? And so it had to be either all 3 or 0. But I do think that 100% buying Twitter was a massive, massive shift. And I think that shift, like buying Twitter, caused a shift in the entire internet, right? Because like now you have companies that are talking about free speech again.
Man, I don't even give a fuck. I don't use Twitter.
Talking about censorship, misinformation, and you know, empathy-based, you know, fucking moderation. Be interesting to see what Republican lawmakers do now. I know lawmakers say they should side with President Trump or Elon. Oh, and some food for thought as they ponder this question. Trump has 3.5 years left as president, but I will be around for 40 more years. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know why. Like, how is this even a fucking sides issue? Like, in my opinion, I think it's pretty fucking obvious that it's a bad idea and it's not good that you can have a bill and there's like 50 things in the same fucking bill. Like, this is a problem. Like, really? Like, how is this even a conversation? I don't know. Who do you guys think is right in this? Is Elon right or Trump? What do you guys think?
Bro, none of them are right. They're a bunch of fucking idiots with too much money.
Elon? I kind of feel like he is too, honestly. Yeah, Trump, Elon's Delulu. I feel like there's such a massive amount of things in the same bill that you have to say yes to everything in. This is a ridiculous premise. A crazy premise. Elon has a black eye and then he hated Trump? Well, I don't know if there's a reason for that. Sounds silly. Regardless of right and wrong, the bill's retarded. Yeah, I mean, like, there's definitely that. Now, I think that, like, really doing the you owe me thing, like to Trump or whatever, I think this is like, I've never seen a time where telling somebody that you owe them something because they helped you, I don't think that that's ever been a beneficial thing. And I think it's always like kind of like a combat option RPG dialogue thing to say, where it's going to put that person against you, it's going to alienate them and make them mad. And so, like, if you do that, it's just not really, it's counterproductive, right? And so, like, for me, like, remember what I've said before, right? Like, I only say things and do things that are in my best interest, right? And so when I see this, I think to myself, oh, I don't think he's really acting in his best interest here. The bill's incredible for tax cuts and border for deportation. Well, who cares? Like, why are tax cuts and the border in the same bill? These are two different things. It's like, why would you, it's like you're serving, it's like you go to Walmart and, actually no, that's not a bad example. You go to Home Depot and they also have, they're also selling dogs.
Yeah, we've got this enormous federal budget deficit. And it's a $2 trillion deficit. It keeps growing. Our interest payments are higher than our Defense Department budget. That's I think was the real wake-up call for me, was looking at seeing that the interest payments on national debt exceeded the Defense Department budget. And that was only growing.
Seems like some bullshit to me.
Over time, which meant if we didn't do something about this, then there won't be any money for anything. We'll just be servicing debt.
And you know how to read an income statement. And you know how to read about...
anybody can look at a number that's like $20 trillion and it says negative 20 trillion. Like, I mean, if anybody got it, like, how many, like, let me think about this, all right? So, 20 trillion.
Break their bones.
Million, billion, trillion. I mean, that stresses me out just looking at it. Really? Like, I mean, that's bad, bro. Like, that's really bad. Yeah, I mean, is it 30, was it 37? Oh. Oh, wow, Jesus. Oh, that's scary, look at that. Yeah, wow, that's awful. And so anyway, what the fuck? Yes, exactly, what the fuck? And so, yeah, the amount of spending and everything is insane. How are you doing this? And in my opinion, you have to tax people more money. Like, you have to find another way to make more money. Tax rich people and corporations more money. That's, in my opinion, one of the big solutions. Stop spending as much money on stupid shit. Stop spending as much money on the military. Like, really, it's insane. Increase taxes, decrease spending. Yes, obviously. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this, but yeah, there it is. What a waste of time by our president. Rather than make things about Elon, he should be simply clear. These are conditions. The bill will reduce the deficit. How he will create the deficit. Use that to lead, not fight with citizens. Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that the goal, obviously, is to reduce the amount of money the federal government is paying out in interest and the amount of debt that it has. So it shouldn't really be about Elon or not. It should be about the debt and how you're going to reduce that. And let's see if I can find any more of these here. And I was shown the bill. I wasn't. I think he means to say he wasn't, right? Like, even, yeah, I think he means I wasn't shown the bill even once. I'm not even sure. Let me go back. I'll read some more of these too. And you have to spend money to make money. Yeah, but like, what's the long term? You know, like, at least explain that, right? Explain that if that's what it is. And so anyway, let's see here. What is this here? Greg Yang, awesome. Is this anything interesting? And let me double check. Fixing bot replies. Yeah, that would be nice. And let's see here. Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of people are. This guy would win a landslide. And these are all posts from old Donald posts right here. The more you learn about the debt deal, the worse it gets. 17 trillion national debt. So let me get this straight. So in 2012, 13 years ago, so where's the America national debt?
Did he just cut the video off right there? I thought he was going to cover something. Oh, never mind. He was just very quiet.
Debt per citizen is $100,000, and debt per taxpayer is $300,000. This seems really bad. Did they know about this? In the government, have they seen this website? Did anybody show them this? That's not how it works. Okay, so here's really, so this is what I think is interesting, is that even if you can't reduce the national debt to zero, every single thing, and this is one thing that I think should always, this is a big shift that I think has happened with companies, and I think it's because probably, you know, with Elon, I think is a big reason with doing how he did Twitter, is the idea that even if you can't reduce this number to zero, you should try to reduce it to, like, I don't know, 35, you know, instead of 36. Like, that would be better, right? I mean, shit. And so the problem really, just fix the deficit. Yeah, and also wealth per 500K. Yeah, this is insane. Revenue per citizen is 15,000. So you have the debt. So you have the debt is 107,000 and the revenue is 15,000. This seems like it looks like these guys are making AAA woke video games. This is a really, really bad return. This is like, bro, I'm pretty sure in some of these cases, Concord might have had a better return than this did. This is bad. Oh my God. Yeah, it's never going down. It's in fact going to rapidly increase due to a cumulative debt increase. Yeah, I mean, this is insane. Well, he goes, whatever. Okay, let's see here. And whatever, keep the EV solar incentive cuts in the bill. Even go through no oil and gas subsidies are touched. Very unfair. But ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in the bill. In the entire history of civilization, there's never been legislation there's never been legislation that is both big and beautiful. Everyone knows this. Either you get a big ugly bill or a slim and beautiful bill. Slim and beautiful. I've been trying to tell people this about video games for the last 5 years. Bro, see, yes, I've been saying this for over and over and over. Yep, see, there it is. It's the same with everything, right? It's a fat, retarded bill. Ain't nobody want a fat, retarded bill. And maybe I should tweet that out. Should I do it? I'm just gonna do it. There it is. Okay, yeah. No, I mean, how is it that, and this is the thing, if you were to ask an average citizen, Do you think that it makes sense that bills include like all of these different unrelated issues and they're all put together? What do you think average citizens would say about that? What do you think the average person would say? Because I think that most people would say, listen, it's fucking terrible. Like, I would assume that like 90% of people would say that it's silly to put everything that's unrelated together in the same bill. This is like Noah's fucking Ark. Think about it. And everybody knows that shit's fake. You can't have an alligator in the same boat with a chicken, or you're only going to have an alligator. So did Trump post about this as well? I bet he did. Let me go back and see. So here we go. The easiest way to save money. Okay. So this is the post. Trump just made this post. Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do. Yeah, I thought, by the way, I thought this was public information. Because even I knew that Trump was getting rid of the EV mandate. I thought he said it, and I'm pretty sure even he said it with Elon in the room. Yeah, am I crazy? Yeah, I thought that's what it was. Okay, that's what it was. Trump's lying. Elon doesn't give a fuck about this? Well, I'm not sure. The easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised Biden didn't do it. So now he wants to terminate Elon's subsidies. I don't think that's a good idea either. Like, I feel like this is, this isn't good for anybody. And Trump just said that Elon didn't know on TV. Well, I'm not sure, right? Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Yeah, crash out. Why not? Because I think Tesla and SpaceX provide a value to the public that's beneficial. And I think the government helping fund private business that operates in a way that's beneficial for the public is a good thing. That's the reason why. It's pretty simple. Like, I'm fine with government giving subsidies to any company as long as the company is doing something that's in the best interest of the public, right? Well, this is more of it. Let me see if there's any more.
Criticism that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, regarding Elon Musk and your big, beautiful bill. What's your reaction to that? Do you think it in any way hurts passage in the Senate, which, of course, what is you're seeking?
Well, look, I've always liked Elon, and I was very surprised. You saw the words he had for me, and he hasn't said anything about me that's bad. I'd rather have him criticize me than the bill, because the bill is incredible. It's the biggest cut in the history of our country. We've never cut. It's about 1.6 trillion in cuts. It's the biggest tax cut. You would say, people's taxes will go way down, but it's the biggest tax cut in history. It's we are doing things in that bill that are unbelievable. And when you look at what we're doing for small businesses, for people, for middle-income people, all of the things that we're doing, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And, Elon's upset because we took the EV mandate, and, which was a lot of money for electric vehicles. And,
Elon says that's not true, right? It's not about the mandate. Like, he says, let me see if I can find it real quick. Where did he say this here? Where'd it go? And I'm not sure exactly where it went. Such an obvious lie, so sad. Elon's wearing thin, asked him to leave. The EV mandate. Yeah, I don't know. Like, he said that's not what happened, or that's not why he cared.
A hard time, the electric vehicles, and they want us to pay billions of dollars in subsidy. And, Elon knew this from the beginning. He knew it for a long time ago. That's been in there. That's been, I would say, JD, that hasn't changed. That's been right from the beginning.
Yeah, so maybe that's not the reason why he's mad. Like, I mean, wouldn't that logically make sense that, like, if this thing that was there the whole time, and, like, I'm pretty sure Trump even, like, I don't know, maybe this is like a Mandela effect, but I remember Trump saying something about getting rid of a Biden or something like that EV mandate, and Elon was in the room at the same time. Am I crazy? Like, I don't know if somebody can find this clip or find this video, but, like, I remember seeing this too. That happened? I think it happened.
The secretary, that hasn't changed at all, right from the beginning. But I know that disturbed him. he wanted, and rightfully, you know, he recommended somebody from that he, I guess, knew very well. I'm sure he respected him, but to run NASA, and I didn't think it was appropriate. And he happened to be a Democrat, like totally Democrat. And I say, you know, look, we won. We get certain privileges, and one of the privileges, we don't have to appoint a Democrat. NASA is very important. We have great people. General Kane is going to be picking somebody with our. We'll be checking him out, seeing. But he wanted that person, a certain person, and we said no.
Yeah. What is this here? The EV mandate. The EV mandate is the Green New Deal. So he campaigned on ending it, and everyone knew it was ending. Yeah. I don't even. I don't know why.
And you know, I can understand why he's upset. Remember, he was here for a long time. You saw a man who was very happy when he stood behind the Oval desk.
Yeah.
And even with the black eye, I said, "Do you want a little makeup? We'll get you a little makeup." But he said, "No, I don't think so," which is interesting.
Somebody said that there was like him and like I think that Scott guy got in a fight over some bullshit.
What he says is his 5-year-old kid punched him in the face.
And getting in fights in Congress.
I don't know, at least that's what Elon says.
Makes them look bad? No, absolutely not. I totally disagree. I'm a big fan of getting in fights publicly over legislation. And the reason why is because if I have a congressman and I know that he's willing to throw down for me, he is willing to get in the arena and fucking fight it out for my money and my interests. All right. Okay, now we got somebody that gives a fuck, right? Fair point, yeah. Now he actually cares. That you know they care.
And very nice. He wants to be who he is. So you
yeah,
can make
anytime
that
I see
statement
somebody
too, I guess.
fighting in Congress, I'm like, or anywhere in the world, I'm like, all right, this is a guy, this guy really means it.
Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer. Said the best thing. He's worn the hat. Trump was right about everything.
Well, I don't think Elon is really criticizing Trump. He just says that the bill is bullshit and it has a bunch of stuff in it that it doesn't need. I mean, I feel like that's very different than him. Like, Elon's not criticizing Trump as a person. He's not saying Trump's a bad president. He's not saying that Trump is, like, bad. He's just saying the bill is bad. Like, bruh.
You guys, like, elected a goddamn racist, rapist, fucking criminal. And you're trying to say, oh, yeah, Trump's not a bad guy. Come on. What a bootlicker.
I feel like these are two very different things.
And I am right about
whose side are you on?
Big, beautiful bill.
This is the side that I'm on. I think that it would have been better if Elon stayed in the government and kept auditing different parts of the government. I was disappointed that he left. I was hoping that he would stay in the government for all 4 years and cut out all of the military overspending and everything. And I wish that he had gone through every single thing in the entire government and audited every single fucking person with a bunch of 22.
Hey Jared, how you doing, bud? I don't know if I'm late on seeing your message in Twitch.
I wanted him to be their reckoning, and that's what I was. Yes, he'll be back. Well, I hope so, right? And the thing is, because I always said they're doing USAID because I hope that they're gonna, you know, like you level up by killing low-level mobs in Night Rain. So that way, by the time you get to the Night Lord...
Oh yeah, I've got Night Rain downloaded, but I haven't, like, launched it yet.
It's called the Pentagon. And so I understood why this was happening, and I thought this was a smart idea. Like, okay, let's start small and build up. But it never materialized.
Oh yeah, you wake up around this time. What time is it for you? Like, what, 8, 9 in the morning or something?
He's only gonna stay here for 120 days. Who decided that? You did. Just change the... Just say never mind. Just say, no, actually, we like things how they are. We're going to keep doing them this way. What's the problem with this? DM Elon about this? You know what the funny thing is? I bet he probably agrees with me. He probably does. He probably does.
Are you streaming tonight or not today?
And anyway, Trump wanted to drawn at him to get into power. That's all. Well, I don't know. I mean, again, like Elon is being critical of Trump. I mean, I don't think you're really like I don't know. It's just like, for example, when I read this, I don't think that this is really being critical of Trump. This is and also like now like Trump is the one. Like Trump is the one that made it personal with this tweet, right? In my opinion. Before this, Elon was just criticizing the bill. Like that's my opinion. Am I crazy for saying that?
What are you streaming today? What's on the menu, the schedule?
I told them I was gonna have I had that rat in my house, and then I had other shit. I still haven't gotten back to them with all the stuff for like X. I bet he's probably a little bit pissed off, right? And so you know, like that's it. And I don't want to message back until I have it done. But yeah, hot take. What's this? Your Epstein files are the hindrance to all progress. The Epstein files are the hindrance to all progress in the government. Honestly, I would believe that, right? And let's see here.
Oh yeah, Red Dead 2.
The autism is wrong, but not Trump's. Well, no,
Whenever I think of that game, it reminds me of like the one.
Let me see. Say anything. Anything else?
Americans, when their stupid wooden house gets destroyed for the fucking 7th time from some hurricane or whatever, some tornado, and then it shows like that scene of Red Dead, like post game where they're all like building the house. I don't think you've gotten to it, but I think that scene is specifically from like post game stuff.
Besides that, no, he hasn't. There's nothing else. And Trump said 10 months ago they would remove the EV mandate. Yeah, I remember very distinctly watching this happen. But anyway, let me go back to the rest of it.
We call it a great, big, beautiful bill because that's what it is. And again, biggest tax cuts in history, biggest economic development moves anywhere. Yeah. We've never done anything like it. Business is spurred. And I don't know if you've seen the numbers, but the numbers came out. Even the CBO, which is run by Democrats, said that we're going to be doing, you know, I'd like you to discuss it, the 2.8 trillion, that CBO. This is a group of people that are Democrats. They're very hostile to us. They just came out with phenomenal numbers, what it does. You want to mention that, Scott?
Yes, sir. So what we've seen is we keep hearing from the CBO that there's going to be a large deficit from the bill, which we disagree with, but using the CBO scoring, they came out and scored.
How big is that game? Like, it's probably definitely bigger than Night Rain, right? I may try out Red Dead Redemption 2. Maybe. I've heard so much of it. I remember when it first came out, what, 2019 or something? 18? Before 2020, I worked at like a dispensary, and all like my coworkers were like all talking about it. It was like, I was too busy like playing like WoW or old school RuneScape at that point.
A minimum of 2.8 trillion over the 10-year window, which actually puts the bill in surplus if you include the tariff revenue, which they won't do.
It gives you a tremendous surplus, but we're not allowed to use that for some reason.
Sounds like it would take me something like 9-10 hours to download with my internet, I'd imagine.
I don't. Because it's not about whether it creates a surplus or not. Like, for example, if the government is operating under a surplus with the bill, that doesn't mean that it's automatically good. Like, would you rather have a C on a test or an A on a test?
I somehow found a way to like fix my whole crashing issue, at least. Somewhat of a workaround. So I haven't had like a crash in like a couple of days, but I just got to open up the battle.net as admin, and then also do the same thing with OBS for admin. And then for some reason, I don't know, when WoW is like open in admin, it can't, like, the game capture doesn't work on OBS, so I just get like a black screen. But then I found a way around that. It's to use the display option, so you guys see everything on my screen, what I see, basically.
You would obviously rather have an A on a test. Well, I mean, maybe, right? I mean, usually that's the case. And so, like, a B, right? Yeah, of course, right? So you'd rather have a higher grade. So it shouldn't be about whether, like, and also here's the thing is that this is what I think Elon should do, is that, like, this bill is public, right? Like, the public can read this bill. I'm pretty sure they can. He needs to find the pages and find the things that are part of this bill and then post them on social media specifically what the problems are. And like you're saying, like, where's the pork? I don't know where the fucking pork is. 99.99999% of Americans will never read this fucking bill, but they will read a page of the bill. And if the page of the bill is put out there and the public sees that this bullshit is in the bill, then that will change people's opinions more than anything else. Because again, it's evidence and it's proof. That's what matters more than anything. Grok can analyze it? Well, no, because Grok isn't the one calling it pork. Elon is the one that's calling it pork. So he should be the one that's defining what he means by that and which parts of it are problematic and which parts aren't. You know, like, that's really what it is. I mean, I feel like that's clearly, like, Trump will twist it. Well, it's not about Trump twisting it or not. It's about it's about the information being available to the public. You see what I'm saying? Which is totally beside the point. No, I think this is the point. The point is that, so, whether the government makes more money or not, I don't think really matters all that much. Or sorry, is making money or losing money, I don't think it matters that much. What matters is if you're doing it in the most efficient way possible. You can win, but you should have won more. And whenever you, like, I mean, again, this is coming from somebody whose dad, I would get a 97 on a test, and my dad would ask me, what did you miss? Okay? So, like, I understand what, you know, like taking an easy W, and it would always annoy me when he would do that. But at the same time, if you're missing points and you're not getting things right, then you're still not operating at efficiency. Is that my point? Yeah, I feel like that's it. Okay. Give me a minute. Okay, let's see if this looks good. Okay, yeah, there we go. Perfect. You think I should just tweet it out? Okay. This seems like a problem. How about that? Tag Elon? No, he follows me. He'll see it. Yeah, no, it's fine. Well, let me see. Yeah, is this good? You guys like this? Yes? Okay, good. And you might get retweeted? Yeah. Let me see. And wow. Okay, perfect. Yep, there we go. And I don't know. Like, I mean, somebody got to say it, right? I mean, shit. Time to drop the really big ball. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, Donald Trump. Oh boy. And yeah, what an interesting day, guys. Crashing out? Yeah, I guess so. I am so glad that Elon made this tweet. Do you know why? Because I love accelerationism. And him saying that Trump is in the Epstein files will move us one step closer to them releasing the Epstein files to either contextualize that or respond to him. I'm a big fan of this. I think this is great. Thank God. Let's see here. Do you honestly think if Trump was implicated in those files, the media and Democrats wouldn't have dropped that nuke? The reason why, so you bring up a very good point. If Trump was actually implicated in these files, why didn't the Democrats drop it? And you want to know the reason why, I think? It's because they were implicated too. I think that they were both implicated, and the only reason that we're knowing about it, and this is also, like, I'm just making this up. Like, I'm guessing. Like, this is like a theory, okay? Is that they were all in on it. Elon Musk wasn't in on it because he wasn't really part of the government, and he's also younger than a lot of them too. So it would have happened before, like, he really kind of came into prominence. And so he comes in there and he sees this and he's like, what the fuck? Maybe. But like, and that's the most beneficial and the most generous towards Elon. Now, there could also be Elon Musk is exaggerating this in the same way that Trump is exaggerating, what do you call it? Trump is exaggerating the this bill, right? Or Elon getting mad about the bill because of this. So, like, they're both just, there's a good chance, again, they're both just making shit up about each other. Dude, if they don't release them after this, this is going to be, like...
Wait, no.
If they don't release...
No, I thought it was already common knowledge, like, months ago that Trump was on the Epstein, like, list. Like, just nobody really gave a shit, because, like, a bunch of bootlickers...
And they don't explain this. everybody is going to think Trump was actually on the island with like the underage girls and everything. I don't mind Elon turning against me, but he shouldn't have, but he should have done so months ago. This is one of the greatest bills ever presented to Congress. It's a record cut in expenses, $1.6 trillion, and the biggest tax cut ever given. If the bill doesn't pass, there'll be a 68% tax increase to make things far worse. I'm here to fix it. This puts our country on a path to greatness. Okay, so this is just whatever, right? This is the bill. I feel like the Epstein files are a bit more of a contentious topic now than the bill. Like, am I crazy for saying that? I think it's a bit more of a big deal. In light of the president's statement about cancellation of a government contract, SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately. Is Elon spiraling out? What is it? Let me just look it up. I'll look it up right now. What is the Dragon spacecraft SpaceX? The Dragon, is it for purpose and variance, Carbo Dragon, or Cargo Dragon, key feature, missions, significance, first commercially built spacecraft. The Dragon marked the first commercially built spacecraft to service the ISS. Oh, man. Oh, boy. Basically handicapping NASA. Yeah, I do think that this makes Elon look bad. I do. I think this makes him look bad because, again, how's his real right now? Yeah, especially because, like, this is, again, like, people are going to view this and see this as, like, Elon, what do you call it? Like, they're going to view it as, like, him putting people at risk and not wanting to help, like, the astronauts because of some personal, like, issue. That's what I think people are going to see this as. It's going to seem like it's a petty thing. I don't think they're going to begin decommissioning. Yeah, I hope this doesn't actually happen, right? And we'll have to wait and see, though.
What else we got? I don't even know why I'm still subscribed to all these old school RuneScape people. I haven't played the damn game in like half a year or something. I'm sent on a classified mission to another reality. I hired a mascot. Anonymous. Oh, it's only 16 minutes. I want something long to listen to. Maybe we'll listen to the creepypasta. Alright, I guess, creepypasta. Or was that this one? Don't give me that ad block bullshit. Don't make me refresh this. Okay.
Bright lights blinded me as they yanked the bag off my head, suddenly lighting up my world that had been dark for hours now. I was sat at a long conference table. The agents who had just taken the bag were withdrawing back to the wall behind me. At the other end of the long, heavy wooden table was an older man. Sorry about the shady spy stuff. Can't have anyone knowing where we operate, you know. The older man chuckled. Can I get you anything to drink? Coffee, tea, water? My thoughts were racing. Everything about the past day wasn't making any sense. I was in my cell just a while ago, minding my own business, doing some reading, and then suddenly the guards come in, throw a sack over my head, and we're on our way. Then this guy is the one to greet me. Where am I, man? I asked, unsure of what was going on. Sorry, introductions, he said, waving a hand. Name's Ronald. I'm kinda the guy in charge here. And you're Vincent. I've read your file. A great thief, whistleblower for some really messed up stuff that the Avaris Corporation was doing. Probably still is, but that's for another time. You've got a life sentence for trying to help people. Am I right? I blinked at him. You see, I think you shouldn't be punished for trying to help. Unfortunately, though, I can only pull so many strings before the government is knocking at my door. So, I need to have some help. You're going to help me, Vincent. You ever wondered if we're alone in this world? I've hoped, I mumbled back. Feels like there's going to be a hidden camera reveal any second. Some dumb comedian coming out to tell me that I've been pranked. No such luck. Well, we're not. The only thing is that it's not really this world, but another one almost exactly like it. Thousands of them, actually. Each one living out their own existence, unbothered by what's going on in ours, he said, motioning to someone outside the door behind him. A woman comes in holding a tray with 2 coffees, one of which she sets in front of me, the other in front of him. He nods in thanks before continuing. Now, one of these worlds managed to make a huge breakthrough. Unfortunately, they were beset by some apocalyptic situations. Now the breakthrough they've made is useless to them, but it could end up changing everything if we get hold of it. Are you following me so far? So, what is it that they found? I asked. Classified. We need your help to retrieve it, though, he said, staring at me as he sipped his coffee. If I don't know what it is, how the hell am I supposed to retrieve it? I almost laughed here. Must have died in my sleep back in the prison. Maybe Avaris finally sent somebody to make sure that I stopped talking about them forever. Jesus, if this is heaven, it's an absolute joke. Oh, we'll give you all the information you need to find it, of course. We'll also be sending a team with you in order to get it. Highly trained personnel of our own, of course, he replied. You think we expect you to do this for free? We're willing to offer you quite a bit. I'm listening. I might as well play along. He's going to offer me a pardon, freedom, typical movie cliches. But he and I both know that as soon as I'm out, Avaris is putting a bullet in my head. You get to die, he said now, making me almost spit out the sip of coffee that I was going for. He laughed in response, raising a hand. Well, in the public eye at least. We'll have you killed while in prison and you get a new identity. We're also willing to cover any living expenses that you may incur and give a monthly stipend for your services for the rest of your life, so long as you let us keep an eye on you to ensure that you're not oversharing with anyone. I took a moment considering what he was saying. It wasn't like they were going to let me out anytime soon. And even if they did, it's not like Avaris was going to just let me live my life in peace after all was said and done. A deep sigh was all that I could manage. Fine. When do we leave? In 2 hours. Do you want to eat first? We can get you anything you want. He replied, smiling and drumming on the table for a moment before getting up. Can you guys let him loose? There's no reason to keep him locked up. As long as the food's free, I guess, I sighed. About 30 minutes later, somebody came walking in with a tray. A huge double cheeseburger with pepper jack and onion rings loaded on it, and an order of fries, accompanied by a caramel milkshake sitting on it. Considering that I didn't know what was about to happen, I'm going to take what I can get. The rest of the time passed quickly, but I finished my food and started nervously pacing before they came to collect me, providing new clothes and a backpack of some basic supplies that I had requested. Before I knew it, I was being marched through the dim lights of this facility, finally stopping in front of what appeared to be an empty doorway. 5 others were waiting, guns slung over their shoulders and combat gear on. Hey, shouldn't I get one of those too? I asked the guide who had brought me here. He only nodded, handing me a pistol. I looked at it, ejecting the magazine to make sure that it was full before replacing it once more. That's it? They've got rifles, dude. Let us handle the shooting, one of the guys said. He looked rough, a huge scar running down his forehead, through his eye and onto his left cheek. You just make sure that we get what we need. I still barely even know what the heck we need, I grumbled. Suddenly a loud mechanical whirring began though, and the doorway in front of us was no longer empty. There was a faint purple light coming from it, with darkness beyond. Alright, the jump is open, let's head in. You, another one of the soldiers was speaking, now pointing to me. He had a huge, bushy beard and sunglasses over his eyes, but I could still feel him staring me down. Stay in the middle of us at all times. I nod, moving further towards the center of the group. Beard and Scarface moved in front of me, stepping through the doorway with a slight buzzing sound as they passed through the dim purple light. The other 3 lined up behind me, motioning me forward. Before I went through, the guide who brought me handed me an earpiece, motioning for me to put it in. Can you hear me? I say, settling the piece into my ear. All 5 of the others grunt in acknowledgement. Now come through, I heard Beard say in my ear. Deep breaths, moving through the doorway feels like I'm stepping through a field of static as it engulfs me. My breath catches for a moment, unsure of what I might be getting into, and then suddenly, I'm clear again. Beard and Scar are waiting there in the dark hallway engulfing them. As they each turn on a flashlight, I can see that this resembles the building that we just came out of. The others follow behind me after a moment, stepping forward into the darkness and turning on their own lights. I fumble around in my bag, finally grabbing onto a small tactical beam of my own to light my way. We walked through the hallway briefly, darkness almost suffocating on every side. Beard finally raised a hand, motioning for everyone to stop where they were at the moment. We must have been near an exit, because sounds began to make their way towards us, and after a moment, the smell hit along with it. It was like the worst rot imaginable, everywhere all at once as it filled my nostrils and made my eyes water. I've gotten whiffs of some nasty stuff in my lifetime, but this, God, it was like somebody took a deep freezer of meat and put it out in the Florida sun for a week unplugged. It was almost painful to smell. It was unavoidable. I searched deep in my bag, looking for anything that I could rip up and stuff into my nostrils. Nothing that I had asked for in prep was going to cover this, though. God, what was it that could smell this bad from inside a building? What is in here, outside? Was that what we were supposed to be worried about while we're over here? Dang, Sims, did your mom open her legs again? One of the soldiers quipped at another, causing the rest to snort with laughter. Simmons, a younger guy with graying stubble, rolled his eyes in the dim light. Your mom ever shut hers, Pierce? Simmons shot back, making the others nearly lose it. I couldn't find the humor considering how overpowering the smell was. All right, Scar said, raising a hand. He put his pack on the ground, pulling out a map. We were in a small city, not sure what state, but the point Scar marked was right in the middle, surrounded by small outlines of other buildings. He traced a line down the street, turning right 3 blocks down and continuing on for about 5 blocks before marking another building with a massive X. We've got to make it 8 blocks total before we hit our target area. It's not likely to be a simple walk, so be ready to take care of any threats along the way. Now, I know that all of you can smell that out there. That's what we need to be on our guard against. What is out there? I asked, looking each of them in the eyes in turn. At least tell them that they gave you all some more information on what we're getting into. Zombies, man, Simmons muttered. Seriously, zombies. Some George Romero BS is what's waiting for us out there, I asked. When Ronald told me that there was danger to the mission, I expected, like, I don't know, enemy soldiers or just some booby-trapped buildings or something. But Jesus. Yeah, the Walking Dead brother. Pierce mumbled back. Look, it sounds insane, but all the zombie rules apply here. Don't get bit, don't get scratched, aim for the head, and whatever you do, don't get bit. The moment I see one of you take a chomp off one of these things, I'm putting a bullet in your head. Consider it mercy. Beard said, deadly serious as he went over the threat awaiting us. So what do we do once we reach the target building? Pierce asked the commander. Oh, Mr. Mills here, Scar pointed at me now, is going to get into the computer system for us. The place is still running on backup gen, so we'll have to force our way in through the system. Normally I would say we could just blow our way through with enough explosives, but well, they have fail-safes on the lab area that would destroy what we're after if somebody gets too close. Yeah, we'll make sure you're not eating while you get us in there. Once we're in though, we grab the target, duck out of the building, and head here. Beard points to another X on the map, not far from the target destination. They'll have an extraction portal set up for us to jump right through. Let's make it out of this one alive and get home, understood? Sir, the others confirmed. I gave my own, slinging the pack over my shoulder, hefting the gun in one hand and the flashlight in my other. We continued down the hallway, the sounds from outside growing louder now. Groans, moans, and the occasional scream split the air, telling me that nothing good was waiting for us out there. Beard opened the door, giving a signal for everyone to move, and we all filed out one by one, unsure of what would be waiting for us out there. The first thing that I noticed was the light. It was dark out, not a star in sight, and only the occasional streetlight was still running to show the way. The sky above had an odd tint to it though, almost scarlet, like it was smeared with blood. Ominous clouds moved across occasionally, dark and looking like they were going to burst with crimson rain at the slightest movement. Stay frosty, Scar mentioned as we turned, walking down the street. Buildings towered over us on each side, probably 10 floors at their tallest, and on occasion a scream of pain and terror would break through the still night air. Somewhere in the distance a fire was glowing, sending up smoke with a smell that would occasionally cut through the stench of rot that filled my nose. We moved in silence, the smell doing everything that it could to choke us. Even when I wanted to open my mouth and say something, the stench it forced its way in, settling on my tongue and making me gag within seconds. Before long we had gone 1 block, with the rest of the way seeming like miles and miles before us. Hello? A voice came from an alleyway nearby as we passed. Help me, please. Don't even think about it, Beard whispered to the rest of us. We all froze, looking at the alleyway as something moved deep in the darkness. A trash can fell over louder than thunder as it clattered to the pavement nearby. A small figure walked out, shadows obscuring their entire body as they neared us. Don't trust it. It could be somebody living though, the 5th soldier mentioned. He didn't look nearly as battle-hardened as the others, and took a slight step towards the alleyway even as Beard was motioning for him to get back. We have to help them, right? Step back, Scar muttered as he tried moving forward again. The shadowy figure coming towards us couldn't be older than a child, maybe 4.5 feet tall, thin and frail looking. As it stepped closer out of the alley, the shadows around it began to dissipate, moving towards the young soldier. I almost threw up right then and there on the street. It was definitely a kid, or at least it was at one time. Now though, it was something not quite dead, but not necessarily alive either. The skin was mottled, a sickly pale white with the same odd sheen as a dead body. That itself wouldn't have been so bad, but the real horror was the lower jaw and the upper body. Its mouth was hanging wide open, but the lower jaw was split open at the chin, teeth inverting inward like pincers as the maw extended further down, opening into the thing's neck. Whatever bone that it had in there now looked like jagged teeth. It stepped forward, taking the young soldier by surprise and falling on him. Jagged teeth from the mouth down to his chest cavity suddenly emerging to tear into his skin. So hungry.
Bro's like, learn how to sunder. Bro did 0 sunders. Like, shut the fuck up.
The rest of his frozen fears, it reared back, getting ready to take another huge bite as massive pincers emerged from the split as it opened up its chest, rib bones extending out to stab into the soldier's body. Before it was able to, there was a soft pop as beard emptied around into the thing's forehead, leaving behind a crimson dot as it fell over.
Actually, I guess Recount doesn't show sunders because it does no damage. Fair enough.
Towards the young soldier still writhing on the ground. His neck was torn by one of the big pincers, so he couldn't force air through his windpipe for a scream. Just labored wheezing, desperate to try and live. Scar gave him one brief look before popping around into his head, ending his misery. Sorry, kid. The screams rose up all around in response to the sounds of our skirmish. More of these things sensing a meal moving around in their turf. Within seconds, we could hear the sounds of rough footsteps, ragged breathing, and the occasional gurgling scream running towards us for their next meal. There's a grocery store that we can cut through right over there. Go, go. Beard shouted, moving us all towards a supermarket on the corner, maybe a block ahead of where we needed to turn. I guess it was luck that the doors were unlocked. I stopped thinking that we were lucky once we got inside, though. I don't know how long this place had been going to hell for, but it was long enough for everything left in this supermarket to become a health hazard. Dry goods and most of the stuff on the general shelves were okay, but the smell of rotting meat and produce was heavy in the air. Even worse, we couldn't go more than a few feet without an insane amount of flies buzzing all around, making it hard to breathe in the already thick stench of the rot. I zipped my jacket all the way up, sticking the collar over my face. The air was hot and heavier this way, but it was better than taking a ton of flies directly into my lungs as we walked. We need to go through the back. There should be a loading dock that will let us out onto the next street, Pierce said, scanning the store with his flashlight. Empty registers still had items on them, abandoned midway through checkout. Only the occasional light was on, casting a dim glow over every fifth aisle or so as they flickered. I don't know what happened here, but the scene that was left only told us that it was gruesome. Puddles of blood lined the small aisle in front of the registers, smeared as whatever had left them behind must have gotten up to leave after being turned. Our footsteps echoed as we walked, the occasional squeak on the floor nearly making me jump out of my skin. After everything that I had just seen, I was ready to make my way back to the door that we came through and spend the rest of my days in a cell. Yeah, screw this. Shh. Beard raised a hand, motioning for all of us to stop right then and there. I could hear something moving now despite our stillness, something else over the steady buzz of flies in the air. We moved our flashlights around, the bugs making intense shadows across every aisle and wall in sight as we tried to tell if we were alone. There was something scraping along, sliding on the ground with the occasional squeak, as it went over the puddles of blood on the floor. The heck is that? Simmons whispered as we all shone our flashlights around, trying to tell what was coming towards us. In moments I had the answer. Coming from an aisle only a few feet to my right, something was crawling along the ground. Pale alabaster skin shining in the flashlight beam, red smeared on it from passing through puddles of blood. It wasn't just one of the things, but many fused together. It was like they got pushed in too close together, and instead of just crushing each other, they started to meld on a cellular level, dead flesh absorbing more and more of their peers. 3 heads looked at me, lifeless gray eyes staring straight through my soul in the flashlight beam. Each one suddenly opened their mouth, splitting their lower jaw wide, showing a maw with sharp teeth, clamoring out as if they were each alive and looking for something new to devour. They let out a horrible scream. I don't know if their windpipes were fused as well, but it was so discordant that it sounded like somebody was blowing on a bagpipe without any sense of knowing how to play it. It chilled me down to my core as it started crawling faster. Masses of legs and arms fused at joints where they shouldn't be, rushing towards us in a mad frenzy. "Run!" Beard shouted, taking off towards the back of the store as we all rushed to follow. The mass of bodies let out another discordant scream as it gave chase, desperate to catch fresh prey. As we passed by the meat coolers full of flies, maggots, and rotten cuts of beef or pork or whatever they had been, this thing burst through the aisles behind, gaining on us like a bat out of hell. I don't know how it was so fast when it looked like a mangled mass of limbs, but it was getting closer. Too close. "In here," Pierce shouted, motioning toward one of the swinging doors to the stockroom. We rushed through, Pierce holding the door open until everybody got in. As he let it swing back closed, it hit the abomination, causing it to let out a grunt of pain from every mouth. Before Pierce could follow behind us, though, it pushed through, rearing back for only a moment as the door opened before shooting out a long, spiked tongue that wrapped around his foot. "Pierce!" Simmons shouted, starting to go back for him before Scar grabbed his shoulder, turning him back. There was an emergency exit door ahead, our salvation to get out of this place. We had to move, though. Before any of us could do anything, Pierce looked back, nearly emptying his clip into the creature that still had a grasp on him. More long tongues shot out from the other mouths on it, wrapping around his body as their spikes stuck into his flesh. Before I was able to reel him in, he grabbed the pistol on his hip, putting the barrel to his head and pulling the trigger. His body went limp as the thing staggered forward, throwing itself on top of him and starting to devour his remains. "Come on, out here," Beard shouted, opening the emergency door for the rest of us. As soon as we were through, he shut it back, grabbing a nearby dumpster and pulling it over the doorway, keeping that thing inside where it couldn't come after us. "I thought you said it was just zombies," I shouted at him, falling back against the store wall. We were in a back alley, wider than the others, right next to a small loading dock where trucks could pull in. That was not a zombie man. I don't know what the hell that was. "I'm going off the briefing that they gave me," he responded, almost out of breath. "It doesn't matter, though. We're here now. We can give Ronald a butt kicking when we get back. But we have to make it back first." The three of us left, could only grumble in agreement. Scar and Simmons looked pissed, and I can't say that I blame them. When it comes down to it, though, we only have one way out of here. "Fine, let's keep moving," Scar mumbled. We kept going, moving as quickly as possible through the alley and onto the street now, traversing the last few blocks toward the building that was our target. With any luck, we could get in and get out. Luck wasn't on our side, though. When we finally made it, I could see that our target wasn't an ordinary building. 10 stories at least, with a big sign outside that said, "Avaris Corp." Unbelievable. Nobody told me that these people would be here too. I mumbled, looking at the huge, heavy glass doors with no telling what was beyond. "Yeah, they've got their hands in everything, no matter what universe you're in," Beard mentioned, moving up to the doors and testing them. To our surprise, they gave almost immediately. No locks, no blockade, nothing. "Seems a little convenient," I mumbled. "So, where do we need to go in here?" "Sub-level 3, Scar mentioned. Moving in first, gun raised at the ready for anything that may be waiting. "You gonna be able to get us in?" I nodded. "Depending on what's guarding it, it shouldn't be an issue." "Good then, let's move," Beard said. Simmons let me into the building before following up the rear, keeping his gun up for anything that may come our way. At the other side of the lobby was a wall of elevators, though if they were running was a different question. A light flickered somewhere off to the right, leading down another hallway with a sign marking stairs somewhere along the way. We pushed the button on the elevators, but no light came on. After waiting a moment, we realized that we were going to have to take the long way. I hate the stairs. Simmons grunted as we went along. The stairwell was curved and narrow, ensuring that we had to go one at a time, single file, to descend it. It was going to be cramped, and if somebody attacked in here, we were more likely to hit each other with friendly fire than we were to hit whatever might be attacking. Run, don't fight. Beard nodded as he went down. The footsteps echoed loud on the smooth concrete as we descended, blinking red lights the only thing to illuminate our way. Somewhere far off, I could hear a scream from one of the creatures. Whether it was one singular like we found first upon arrival or one of the amalgamations, though, I don't know. I hope it's the former. After a few minutes of walking, we finally made it to a door marked S3, our destination. When we entered, we could sense that there was something amiss. Glass was broken on the floor with a red emergency light blinking in time with a blaring alarm somewhere deeper in. The main door was ripped from the hinges, a keypad next to it rendered useless. Guess I won't need to get us in, I muttered, somewhat relieved. I could hack systems back home, but God knows if they were going to be the same in this universe reality. Now that I think of it, I was sent here with no guarantee that any of my knowledge would transfer over. Kinda bad planning on their part. We head through the door, lights shining off all white walls, interrupted by the occasional glare of red from emergency lights on the ceiling. I started to grow uneasy when we passed by the unhinged door lying on the ground. There's no way that something human could have done that. Even a truck wouldn't have been able to tear that thing off and get it this far away from where it was supposed to be. Whatever it was, I'm hoping that we don't end up running into it. Hallways twisted and turned as we followed them, trying to find the right door. Occasional windows into labs showed scenes of disarray, with test tubes and tables flipped and scattered all over the place. Every so often there was a spray of blood dried on the wall, or a congealed puddle on the floor, but nothing in sight that could have caused it. In here, Scar grunted, leading us into a small non-windowed room a little ways past the last lab. We went through what was once an airlock, moving into a small storage room full of freezers. As Beard rummaged through, looking through the various freezers for whatever we were after, I swear that I heard a scream come from somewhere else in the building. Scar must have heard it too, because he moved back towards the door, motioning for Simmons to follow as they raised their guns, looking back at Beard. Hey, be quick, alright? Way ahead of you. He grunted back, pulling a vial from the back of one of the freezers. He set it down on the table, grabbing something out of his pack, a small case to put it in. As the vial snapped into the container, a loud roar echoed through the empty halls of the facility. Ah, crap. What was that? Simmons whispered. The roar came again. This one didn't sound like the others, though. The screams of the creature back in the supermarket. This sounded like a beast. A creature made to hunt prey, announcing that we were officially in its hunting grounds. Whatever it is, this is probably where it was made. I muttered, moving past the others towards the door. Not sure about you fellas, but it's not something that I want to run into, especially if it's worse than what we've already seen. Yeah, amen to that, brother, Beard said, putting the vial container back into his bag before following me out the door, hefting his own gun at his shoulder now. Let's go home, boys. We all started down the hallway, making our way back toward the stairs. The trip out of the facility was quiet. I honestly thought that we were going to make it out without any issue, go down to the extraction point and be home free. But I've got to stop assuming these kind of things. Scar was on point, leading us up the stairs when the thing had attacked. I don't even know how far away it was or, well, what the hell it was. All I know is that Scar was here 1 second, light shining forward and gun at the ready. The next moment, he's being hoisted up over us with huge tendrils of red piercing through him, lifting him up forcefully as they tore through his body. "Get out of here!" Scar shouted at us as we gawked at him. I felt Beard shove me from behind, moving me closer to the door. Whatever was holding onto Scar was further up on the stairs above. He desperately tried lifting his gun to fire at it, but before he could get off a shot, the tendrils looped back around, stabbing through his torso again before tearing him clean in half at the midsection. It tossed him down the middle of the stairwell as we ran past, the life draining from his eyes as he fell. We ran out of the stairwell and slammed the door shut behind, dropping over whatever we could find in front of it to block this thing from coming after us. Rushing to the front doors, we threw them open and walked out into the street, only to find that the sky above had opened up, pouring down rain that was now flooding the streets. "That's not helpful at all," Simmons asked, looking both ways up and down the street. Our extraction point was a few buildings down to our left, right across the road. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get there while staying dry, though. Lightning suddenly flashed, illuminating the dark city around through the rain, with a loud boom of thunder following only seconds after. "That might work to our advantage," I said, noticing the smell of rot was much less intense now that the rain was covering it. With any luck, this could cover our movement. Maybe those things didn't like being out in the rain. Wishful thinking anyway. I pulled the pistol from my waistband, preparing for what may be ahead of us. "Alright, it's a yellow building that we're looking for. It's an electronics store. Our extraction point is the door leading into their inventory room. They're going to open the portal there," Beard said, staring Simmons and I both down. "Head straight in. Hopefully the portal is already open, but if not, we use that as base camp until it does. Whatever we do, we make it back home, okay?" We nodded in return, though I could tell that Simmons was on the same hopeless wavelength that I was. Either way, we had to do what we could. Rain pounding the pavement around us, we headed out to the street, ready to make the run to safety. Talk about bad timing with the storm. The wind was howling, more lightning and thunder coming along with it. I was drenched to the bone within seconds after we had stepped out, barely making it through the doorway before the wind blew heavy rain right inside at us. Water flowed into the sewer grates all around us, already starting to flood the pipes below. Thunder struck at the same time as the window above us broke, glass shattering everywhere and falling around us mingled with the rain. We kept running, barely taking a second to look back as something dropped to the street behind us, letting out a massive and angry roar. I was unfortunate enough to look back right as lightning flashed. This thing was huge, at least 10 feet tall, and perched on all fours on the street as rain fell all around it. The thing was, well, I think it was human at one time. The features on the face appeared human-like, with a clear eyes, nose, and I can't necessarily say mouth because there were no lips of any kind. It looked like the skin just split, showing off hundreds of needle-like teeth, lined and smiling. It was long and lithe, pale flesh shining as the rain dripped from it, totally bald with no clothes on either. It was on all fours, long fingers holding it up while what appeared to be a tail with a huge stinger at the end curled up at the ready above it. I couldn't tell very well in the brief light that I had, but its eyes appeared a clear blue, and I could swear that it was sniffing us out as the rain fell around us. I turned away, just willing my feet to pump harder against the pavement as I ran, desperate to get away from whatever this thing was. Unfortunately, it seemed that most of our luck had begun to run out. The thing behind us let out another roar, and from nearly every building all around, the undead began to pour out, not a care given to where they were jumping to, falling from windows and running out of doors with loud crashes that made the thunder seem like a murmur. "Oh God," I mumbled, desperately breathing to keep the oxygen flowing in my veins. Sitting in a cell for years now had me out of shape at this point, opting to rather read and sleep than work out in the prison yard. I was never much for exercise in the first place anyway. Now I was regretting that though, my lungs screaming as we ran. I could hear this thing behind us and I looked back against my better judgment. I thought the hordes of zombies falling to the street around us would keep it from getting too close too quickly. But it had the same idea. Instead of walking on the street, it was jumping over the tops of cars and onto the sides of buildings, sticking to them like a spider as it came closer to us. I was doing all that I could just to dodge any of the undead now baring their teeth at us, barely able to keep up with what was happening as is. Before I knew what was happening, Simmons had shoved me out of the way as the big creature came down, the stinger tearing through his abdomen, where I had been only moments before. "No!" He shouted as blood gushed from his mouth. He held a hand over the wound, using his other to spray the creature with bullets. It pulled the stinger back, leaving a gaping hole in Simmons' midsection, before suddenly sprouting dozens of tendrils from its back. Simmons looked to me, mouthing for me to run as the tendrils stabbed into him, draining him of his life force. The creature gave another shriek, seemingly pleased with what it had done. I ran, putting my head down and staring at Beard's feet as we went, desperate to make it out of this nightmare. Bodies splattered around us as we continued to run, almost to our destination. As the rain picked up once more, I looked to the nearby buildings, trying to see if we had made it. A yellow building with a huge sign reading Circuit Town on the side was right there. Glass doors with a sign that said, "Come in, we're open," hanging down, inviting us in. We desperately threw ourselves against it, forcing the door open the wrong way and breaking through the glass. We didn't have time to feel safe yet, as zombies began to stand and give chase, running after us through the broken door. Beard and I both popped shots off at them, desperate to get some distance before they were able to get their own bites in at us. Finally, Beard and I both scrambled to our feet, desperate to find some way to block them from coming in. At this point, they were forcing past each other to get through, squeezing each other through the small space to get in here after us. We each grabbed the end of a shelf unit nearby, dragging it over to block off what we could and keep a barrier between us and the outside. It only lasted a moment before the zombies were the least of our problems again though, with the massive creature pushing through to come after us once more. Beard shrugged his pack off, tossing it over to me. I could only look at him as he hefted his gun towards the shelf that was keeping us safe. "What are you doing, man?" I asked, stepping back, looking around desperately for the door. "You're going through first, kid. Just in case I don't make it, you can get the objective back home," he said, steeling himself and putting a finger on the trigger. He popped off 2 shots, dropping 2 of the zombies that were climbing over the barrier with well-placed shots to the forehead. "Now move." I nodded, turning to look around. I headed towards the back of the store past aisles of DVD players, televisions, radios, and printers, searching for anything that could lead us back home. I finally saw it. A door set into the back wall. Just in time as I heard the shelves guarding the front door suddenly go flying into the sidewall, pushed aside by the creature as it started ducking through the broken doorway. "It's here, I see it," I shouted to Beard. He popped more shots off, hitting the creature right in the forehead, but doing nothing to it. It absorbed the bullets like they were nothing. Not a good sign. As I neared the door, I sensed something that wasn't right. It looked plain, and as I pushed on it, swinging the metal in on double-sided hinges, nothing happened. I didn't feel that electric charge. It didn't emerge in my own dimension, nothing. We were still here in the electronics store, surrounded by the undead, and whatever this thing was. I turned, shouting again. "No good, portal isn't open." "Unbelievable." I heard Beard mutter under his breath before popping more shots off. He was doing everything to try and keep this thing at bay, realizing that headshots wouldn't work. He tried to take out the kneecaps, but to no avail. It just kept inching towards us on all fours, like a giant cat stalking prey as it made it even closer. The stinger over its back began to curl, brushing the rough tile on the ceiling as it bobbed, getting ready to make the stab at whichever of us looked easier. "Any backup ideas?" I asked. Just hold until they open that door, Beard grunted back. He fired again, center mass this time, but to no avail still. He pulled something off his belt, and it took me until he raised it to his mouth, biting off a pin to realize that it was a grenade. He tossed it at the thing, pushing me backwards and slinging the door closed behind him. I barely had time to think before the boom rocked both of us, sending the door flying inward and knocking us both backwards. The thing roared, angry at the pain that it must have caused. Despite the explosion, though, I could still hear it coming closer as even more zombies poured in through the door behind it. "Come on, open the door," he shouted, punching the air and struggling back to his feet. My ears were ringing from the blast, but I struggled to mine as well. I felt woozy, uneasy as the smell of rot began to pervade this place again. When are they going to open up that door? We got what we came for, but we can't get it back home if they don't bring us back. I really don't want to die here, come on. Suddenly, a purple light began to pulse from behind us, the other side of the small inventory room. Did we have the wrong door? Did they have to make a last-minute change? Either way, Beard and I shared a look, understanding that our extraction point had changed by at least a few feet. But there was our way out, finally. We both started to run as the creature burst through the door behind us. I dove through first, landing almost face first on the ground on the other side. The pack landed beside me, clanking as the vial container inside had rustled around. The smell of rot was finally gone, though. Instead, the building was filled with the smell of dust and maybe some mold, though I honestly was thankful for it. "Ah, we made it," I laughed, pushing myself up off the ground and looking behind me. Beard was standing in front of the door, still looking back with his gun raised at it. Shut it now," he shouted to the men around us. One moved over to a small console that was set up nearby, inputting commands that transmitted to small bars placed around the door. The deep purple electricity in the opening began to dim, growing faint as the transporter mechanism started to shut down. Beard began to lower his gun, a sigh escaping as we were nearly home free. But the stinger of the creature darted right through the closing portal, stabbing right into Beard's chest as the portal fully shut down, severing it. Instead of dropping to the ground, though, it hung limp from the soldier, one side severed and hanging while the other dangled out of his back. He gave a slight laugh at the ridiculousness of the situation. Son of a... He collapsed, blood beginning to pool on the floor around him as his eyes closed. I started to get up, but I could only fall back, looking at the body now in front of me. It must have hit a vital organ because he wasn't even breathing anymore. The last hint of life, just a long, drawn-out rasp as the last air had escaped his lungs. "Ah, Jesus Christ," I said, only staring at the body. I realized a moment later that I was still holding my pistol. As I began to stand up, getting ready to holster it and get the heck out of here, his body began to twitch again. Before I knew what was happening, though, he seized, body arching up, almost breaking his back in half, as he breathed in as much air as he could. It was raspy and coming in short bursts. His face contorted in pain, a scream ripping from his lungs now as his lower jaw began to force itself apart at the midpoint of his chin. It split, leaving long sinew and teeth with no place to go as it continued down his neck, opening his entire upper body wide as it descended. The bones of his ribcage began to crack and distort, piercing through his skin as they turned into two long and hooked teeth, ready to devour any of us if he could only reach. I don't know if it was exhaustion or respect for the man who got me through this nightmare ordeal, but I decided that it needed to be fast. Raising the pistol, I popped 2 shots in his head just to be sure, and within moments his body ceased seizing, falling back limp on the ground as the pool of blood began to grow, seeping further out on the smooth concrete floor. The agents with us didn't say anything, only offering to take my gun as one guided me through the doors, back towards a waiting car that would take me back to their HQ. Once I get there, they'll probably debrief me, ask me what had happened to the rest of the team that was sent, and I'll tell them all about it. Not much sense in keeping a secret about any of this anyway. Whatever is in this bag, whatever they sent us in thereafter, I hope that it was worth it. I'm going to get my freedom now, but I don't think I'm ever going to be free of what happened over there. Whatever Varus is doing here, well, I'm glad it didn't turn into that. I must have barely scratched the surface when I blew the whistle. Guess it's time to start thinking about where I want to disappear to. Definitely not a big city, not after all of that. Maybe the countryside, maybe the mountains. Yeah, the mountains sound nice.
What the fuck? I thought the story was over. Okay. Fair enough. That wasn't really much of like an outro.
I used to love driving late at night. The almost completely empty roads, lit only by the white and yellow glow.
Bro, I fucking hate driving at night. There's too many retards with like those stupid, like illegally bright as the fucking sun headlights. Like, I fucking hate night driving because of that shit.
The sort of serenity. It was a way to unwind and try and forget about the world as it was in the daytime, along with all the problems that came with the eternal rise of the sun. It was my own personal form of therapy and meditation, and it never failed to get me to sleep peacefully when I eventually returned home. Well, that's how it used to be, anyways, up until a few days ago. To give you guys a little bit of context before I tell you what happened, I live in a moderately sized coastal town in the Pacific Northwest. I won't say exactly where, as I don't want anybody brave enough, or stupid enough for that matter, to try and replicate the exact conditions of my experience in hopes of testing it out for themselves. I don't want anybody else to have to go through what I did that night. But safe to say, while it is a rather beautiful place in terms of scenery, it's also, in a way, rather forgotten about. Up until about the mid to late 80s, it was home to a bustling logging industry which, along with the local fishing port, was the town's lifeblood since the beginning of the 20th century, accounting for a large percentage of its residents' income. But when
Thanks for the raid, yeah. Man, you guys sent these guys to like the most boring. This guy's gonna be like entertaining us, the author for this fucking spooky pass. So, like I am doing a boring ass loop. Almost similar to JSRF except for the speedrunning part.
Lost income, but it never fully recovered from losing its biggest industry. It's still more or less frozen in time as it was 30-some-odd years ago. I was writing out my shopping list for the next day that night. It was the last day of the month, and because of my ingrained routine from growing up with my mother, I always bought all the non-food essentials that I needed for the month on the 1st.
So how's everyone doing?
Slipped my mind, and I slapped my forehead lightly. Oh, you idiot. You forgot to gas up earlier. I swore under my breath and then looked at the clock that hung over my kitchen sink. According to it, it was just past 11. I think around 11:15 or 11:20. I bit my bottom lip and debated about what to do. I don't like getting gas in the morning due to everybody all over town seeming to have the exact same idea at the exact same time, and packing into the station like they're a tin of sardines. I knew that there was at least one gas station near my apartment which stayed open all night, which, for the moment anyways, was still under $2.40 a gallon. Ah, screw it, I muttered to myself, pushing the pad of paper away and standing up from the table. I was feeling a bit restless anyways. A late night drive, even for just a few minutes, would help me relax. Pulling on my sneakers and jacket, I grabbed my car keys off their hook and stepped outside. The late February air was colder that night than it had been all winter, and it stung my face as I walked down the stairs and crossed the parking lot to my car, noting with vague interest that there was no moon showing tonight, just the stars, and the occasional brighter flicker of a satellite. Unlocking the door, I had to pull on the handle a couple of times, as ice had formed and frozen it shut. Finally it opened and I slid behind the wheel, jamming the key into the ignition and starting the engine. After a few minutes of running the defroster, combined with having to get back out and use a scraper to rid the windshield of some rather stubborn frost which had refused to melt, I pulled out of the parking lot and onto the street. My neighborhood, like most of the rest of town, had already gone to bed. I only saw a few yellow glows from people's windows that indicated there were others burning late-night oil with me. After a few turns, I pulled into the bright lights of the gas station. Rolling my window down, I pulled 220s out of my pockets and turned the car off. We still have many full-service stations in our area, meaning that you're not allowed to get out of your car and pump your own gas. You have to have the attendant fill it for you. He was talking to someone in a minivan, so I patiently waited for him to spot me. After a few seconds,
we don't got any
he came over
kiters,
to me,
huh?
shaking his head slightly. Hey, sorry, I can't sell you gas right now, man. He gestured back towards the pump. The computers are down for some reason. I've had to turn away everybody who's pulled up for the last 15 minutes. I felt my heart sink a little at his words. Any idea when they'll be back up? I asked, hoping that he would give me a solid answer. But he simply shook his head again. Honestly, I don't know. Could be 15 minutes, could be half an hour. He gave the pumps a look of disgust. I knew connecting the pumps to computers would be a bad idea. He murmured. I grunted in reply, not really knowing how to respond to him. He looked down at me and shrugged, and then slapped the roof of my car and began walking back to his booth in between the pumps. I tried coming back in about half an hour and seeing if we're back online again, he called, stepping inside and sliding the door closed behind him. Oh crap, I muttered to myself, rolling my window back up and turning the key until the glowing green lights of my car's digital dash came on. According to the gas gauge, I had just about a quarter of a tank left. My car is a 30-year-old Crown Vic, and if you don't daily drive an older car, well, let me tell you something. Quarter of a tank really does not last in something that gets 11 to 13 miles per gallon in town.
He's true. Like he's right about that.
And let out another.
I don't really drive modern cars.
Trying to
like
figure out my options.
I think my Grand Prix is like a
simply stay and wait
2006
to
or
see if the
2008.
computer's fixed soon, but there was no guarantee of that. And after seeing how annoyed the attendant had been, I didn't really want to become the new focus of this bad mood. But what else can I possibly do? This was the only gas station that I had been to at night before.
I
really
guess
didn't know
these
if
guys
any of
aren't
the
gonna
others
go
in
kill
town
Bell.
were still open at this time.
What is their strat?
And I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, which now read 1:15 midnight. For a brief moment, I thought about simply heading back home and just accepting having to deal with the lines at the pump the next day. It would be a major irritation, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. But then I shook my head. Now, I can at least check to see if any of the other stations are open and working before I give up, I thought. Nodding in agreement with myself, I started the car and pulled out of the station. I wish to God that I had just given up and not been so persistent. I circled back around through my neighborhood until I drove across an intersection and onto a side road. The road ahead would wind through a few other neighborhoods and a brief but thickly wooded area before emptying out into the other side of town, and it would save me a few minutes overtaking the main road. I traveled down it, passing only a single house that had a light on inside. As I pulled up to a stop sign, I thought for a second that my windshield was beginning to fog up again. "Are you kidding me?" I muttered, reaching over to flick on my defroster again when I stopped. I looked at my windshield and out of it for a moment, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. It took a few seconds, but then I realized what I was seeing. It's ground fog. I got caught out in ground fog. Now, if you've never dealt with ground fog, let me tell you that it's more than a little jarring to drive through, not to mention dangerous. If you've seen movies where a ship gets caught in a fog bank and can barely see what's in front of them, take that and then imagine trying to drive a car through it. You can easily lose track of the yellow median lines when it gets thick enough, and accidentally drive off the road and wreck. I slowed down to about 5 miles an hour below the speed limit, but I kept on going, still not wanting to admit defeat, even though I knew that I was putting myself at risk. I've always had the misfortune of being hard-headed and stubborn, and once again it was keeping me from doing the smart move and turning around.
I guess bro is AFK? Mr. Healer, can I get a heal?
And parked cars,
okay.
steadily becoming enshrouded in the thick white fog. For some reason, the view gave me a bit of an uneasy feeling. It was like looking at a version of something that you recognize, but through the lens of a dream, making it feel unfamiliar at the same time. I shook my head to focus back on the road. Hey, don't let your imagination run away from itself, bro. You need to keep your wits about you. The second neighborhood fell away behind me and I entered the section that was the most dangerous. This part had absolutely no streetlights, and I slowed even further down, not wanting to accidentally hit a deer, or even worse, a homeless person who might wander out onto the road. I fully admit as I drove through this part, only passing by 1 or 2 houses, and clenching the steering wheel as I stared out, able to actually see my headlight beams leading the way in front of me. My mind began to conjure up images from both my nightmares and scary movies that I had watched. I imagined ghostly pirates from a John Carpenter film jumping out of the tree line to slash at my passing car, or some glowing-eyed monster to leap from the trees. Basically, I succeeded in scaring the absolute crap out of myself. When I exited the darkness and drove back into the final neighborhood before heading down a hill to the other side of town, I let out a huge sigh of relief, deciding that I would take the main road back, longer or not. As I came to a stop at the intersection of the main road, I glanced left and right and noticed something odd. As I said before, one reason that I used to love driving late at night in my town was the almost completely empty streets. Emphasis on the word almost. Even at what my car's dashboard clock now indicated is 5 past midnight, there would always be 1 or 2 cars driving on the main roads, from people working the late night or graveyard shifts on their way home or to work.
Damn, how many people are AFKing at this graveyard? That's crazy. Like
And now,
what?
as I looked around
1,
and
2,
strained
3,
my
4,
eyes to try and catch a glimpse
like
of
6,
headlights
7?
or taillights through the fog, I saw nothing. Not a single trace of another human being. I shook my head and crossed the intersection onto another side street, shrugging, but inside, I began to feel that uneasy feeling which had come over me on the darkened road return. It wasn't gnawing at me, almost shooed away by the streetlights passing overhead, and momentarily illuminating the car's interior the way a child's imaginary monster might be frightened away by a nightlight, but it still lay just beneath my skin. I passed by the hulking shape of our town's mall on my right, and then up to the curb beside the Safeway next to it. From here I could see the lit-up gas station on the far end of its parking lot, which for some reason was surrounded by yellow tape. Come on, are you kidding me? Apparently it was closed for some sort of maintenance, which was exactly my luck. I glanced down at my car's gas gauge, which now read at just below a quarter of a tank, and I rubbed my eyes. Sighing, I put the car back in drive and turned back onto the main road. There was one final place that I wanted to check, a gas station 2 blocks up. Please be open, please, for the love of all that is holy, be open. I quietly prayed, hoping that my plea would be heard. However, as I crossed a bridge, I saw that it would not be answered. The darkened shape of it appeared rapidly upon me, and then passed by and disappeared back into the ether that surrounded everything just as quickly. Come on, I muttered, slumping back into my seat as I stopped at another red light. I sighed and shrugged my shoulders in defeat. All right, I officially give up. This isn't going to happen tonight. Time to head back home. I passed by the sign for the bowling alley, the building itself completely obscured by the white veil around it, and I turned right at the next intersection, which led up to the highest hill in town. As the car climbed, the uneasy feeling that I had stayed with me. For the first time in a while, I disliked the silence. I wish that my car's speakers hadn't blown out a few months ago, as the radio would have been a welcome distraction from it. Cresting the hill, I navigated my way through another neighborhood until I came to another main road. This one which led me straight back to my side of town and home. I turned onto it, glad that I would be in my bed in a few minutes as I passed by a dark and empty park on my left. I would deal with everything else tomorrow. As I drove down a hill, I finally spied another sign of life. Down a side street to my right, seen for only a split second, I saw the outline of a person standing on the sidewalk. It was too quick and too foggy to make out any details. Just knowing that I wasn't alone out here made me feel a little bit better, even if it was likely a homeless person wandering around. And that feeling lasted about only 20 seconds until I reached the next intersection. I remember I blinked a few times as if what I saw in front of me would disappear like a hallucination and just up and said aloud, "What the heck is that?" with an absolute feeling of confusion coming over me. Every road in our town, even the main ones, have those stereotypical metal poles at the intersections with the green signs on top, telling you what streets you're approaching in which direction. The ones that I was looking at were not the ones that should have been there, though. Instead, they were the ones for an intersection that I had gone through to get to the closed gas stations. I shook my head and glanced around, where I felt another pang of surprise rip through me. Instead of the AutoZone across the street, the Rite Aid off to my left, and the sandwich shop to my right, I saw the convenience store and houses that stood around the other intersection. Feeling my head spin lightly, I pulled into the empty parking lot of the store and put the car in park. I pulled my glasses off my face and rubbed my eyes, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Am I really that tired? I thought to myself, I've gotta be. In this fog, it's not helping anyone. I had had moments before where I had been so tired, I had sort of drifted into autopilot.
Alright, no healers.
To find myself somewhere
Nice.
else. So I simply chalked it up to another one of these moments. I slapped my cheeks lightly to try and perk myself up, and then spoke aloud to try and focus. Okay, time to get home on the double. This is dangerous now. I pulled back out of the parking lot and drove towards the mall and the Safeway. A minute later, both passed by, the station still lit up and surrounded by the yellow tape. I turned right and drove down the road again, passing by the second closed gas station in the bowling alley. Following the path that I had sworn I had done before, I turned up the hill and made my way through the neighborhood, and I came out onto the main road. This time I looked up at the street signs to make sure that I was where I wanted to be. I saw with a sense of satisfaction that I was indeed on the right one. I turned onto the road and noted the park on my left, as well as the church looming out of the blanket of fog. As I drove down the hill, I glanced to my right again. The intersection whizzed by, but again, I saw the outline of a person standing a few blocks down the road in that split second. I murmured aloud. Maybe it's not a homeless person after all. Maybe it's somebody up late going out for a cigarette break. The thought again made me feel somewhat better. And then it burst like a balloon pricked by a needle as I came to a stop. My eyes widened and I felt my breath clench in my chest as I stared at the street sign. It can't be. There's no way it can't be. But it was. It was the intersection. That same intersection. I sat there, my foot on the brake as I attempted to understand. I knew for a fact that I hadn't drifted off this time, and I had kept careful watch of the streets that I had taken. There was absolutely no way that I was back here. The two roads had no connecting links to each other. Heck, they were almost a mile apart. This makes no sense, I said as I leaned my forehead on my hand. I glanced down at my dash and saw that I had lost a bar on the fuel gauge, spiking my stress further as I looked to the right to look at the distance to empty. It read 20 miles. Swallowing hard, I let out my breath in a whoosh. Okay, get a hold of yourself, you're alright. Keep a grip, don't panic. I whispered to myself. I hoped that my own voice would provide me some comfort and stability, but it didn't seem to help much. I looked around me and saw the same store and houses, and then I pulled away from the intersection. The mall and Safeway passed by again, but when I came to the intersection, I turned left instead of right. This road would lead me back to a main road which intersected with the one that I had twice attempted to get to. As I pulled onto the road, I pushed down on the accelerator just a little bit harder, almost as if to will myself straight to the end. The speedometer crept up to 40 as a billboard for the local hardware store hanging over the street whipped overhead and disappeared behind me. I knew that I shouldn't be going so fast with such limited visibility.
40.
As
What's
much as
that in
my brain was
kilometers?
trying to rationalize what was happening.
40. It's like
Cold shivers
80,
were beginning to
90
climb up my
kilometers
spine.
an hour.
And then they
I forget the
climaxed as
conversion.
the exact same sign came into view and went past. What? There's no way that just happened. There's only one of those signs in town. And there's no way that I just... My thoughts came to a halt as I slammed on the brakes, the rear wheels locking up and sending the car into a slight skid. It came to a halt and I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I was back at the same intersection. I put both of my hands to my forehead and then slammed the steering wheel. "What is going on?" I shouted, my voice slamming back into my ears in the enclosed space. I stopped and took a deep breath and then let it out. Shouting was not going to help my situation, no matter how messed up it was. I thought for a second and then turned right and onto the street which I had driven down twice now. I had a plan concocted in my head, and I hoped to God that it would work. I followed the same path that I had before, turning up the hill and back out onto the main road. As I did, I kept looking at the houses that I passed, wishing silently that I would see one with its lights on, but they all remained dark. The streetlights no longer seemed as comforting as they once did. They almost feel like beacons, alerting something to my presence. I started as I turned onto the main road again. Where had that thought come from? Pushing it away, I slowed as I passed by the park and church, until I came to the intersection that I was looking for. A smile of relief crossed my face as I turned onto the side street and pulled to the curb. Putting the car into park, I stared down the street at exactly what I had been hoping to see. The person that I had previously seen standing on the curb 2 or 3 blocks down was still standing there. Thank you, God, for small favors. I opened the door and stepped out of the car, stretching slightly from the slight cramp of sitting in it for so long. The second that I did, I shivered at the chill that the fog brought with it, pulling the collar of my coat up to try and protect myself somewhat from it. I left the engine running and I stepped forward, squinting my eyes to try and see the person more clearly. Whoever it was stood just beyond a street lamp at the head of a house's walkway, draped in shadow. From this distance, I couldn't tell which direction they were facing or make out any features. To see if they were looking my way, I raised my hand and gave a light wave. No response. Must be looking the other way then, I thought. Glancing back at my car for a second, I began to walk forward, choosing to stay in the middle of the street where the streetlights illuminated the most. As I came within a block of the person, I cleared my throat, hoping that I wouldn't have to raise my voice and accidentally wake anybody sleeping up. The person still didn't respond. Great, I whispered under my breath. Then bracing myself, I raised my voice slightly. Excuse me, I said a little bit louder. I think I need some help. Still nothing. I began to feel a little irritated, as I knew I was speaking loudly enough for them to hear me. I took a few steps forward. Hey buddy, I said that I need a little help over here. The figure stayed where it was, not giving any indication of acknowledgement. I gritted my teeth and stopped caring about waking anybody up, feeling all the negative emotions from the night take over me as I began to stride forward. Okay, look, buddy, I've had one heck of a night, and I don't know what, but the insult died in my throat, and my voice trailed off as I came to a sudden stop. The uneasy feeling that I had had before washed back over me, now accompanied by something else. Fear. A sense of fear so strong that it sent a colossal shiver up my spine. One that felt primal and instinctive. Something's not right. And I knew exactly what my thought had meant. No person short of being completely deaf should be this unresponsive to questions or insults. As my anger and irritation fell away, I realized that every muscle in my body was tensed up. I also suddenly realized something else which made my fear rise slightly. In the silence, I should have been able to hear the person breathing or shuffling around to stay warm. But there was nothing. Nothing but silence. I was suddenly overcome with the feeling that I should leave, like right now, and that whoever or whatever that figure was, I didn't want to see it. I slowly began to step backwards, trying to make as little noise as I could. And that's when the figure moved. I froze as I heard a wet, sliding sound come from its direction. I couldn't tell what it had come from, and I didn't want to know. I was beginning to shake slightly, more from fear than the cold. And then it slowly began to turn. All reason left me, and I whirled around and began to dash back towards my car. I didn't dare look behind me to see what was happening. All focus was on powering me to my escape. I reached for and snatched the handle, yanking the door open and jumping inside. Just as I began to slam it closed, I heard the sound which still wakes me up in the middle of the night. Sheet stained with sweat. I heard the beginnings of a laugh, but not one which could have come from any human. This sound was at the same time dry as paper and as wet as rain, croaking and filled with more malice and evil than I had ever heard in my life. And then my door was shut and I was fumbling for the gear shifter, yanking it down from park into reverse so hard that I thought I would break it for a second. The tires screamed as I jammed my foot down onto the accelerator, and the car flew backwards into the empty intersection. I glanced up for only a split second as I put the car into drive to turn the wheel. And God, do I wish I never had, because what I saw will haunt me until the day that I die. The figure was still in shadow beyond the streetlight, but I knew that it was facing towards me now, because I could see its eyes. Its golden red, glowing eyes. I screamed. I screamed the loudest scream that I had ever let out in my life as I slammed my foot onto the accelerator, the rear of the car breaking loose and sliding out behind me before the tires caught the pavement and shot me forward. The engine roared as I kept my foot hard down, no longer caring about hitting anything at all. All I knew was that I had to get away. The car left the road for a moment as it dropped down into a hill before slamming back to earth. Still, I kept my foot to the floor. As I watched the speedometer rapidly climb towards 60, I kept all of my attention on the road in front of me to keep the car in a straight line. The lights whipped over my head, the wind whipping past the windows, and then I flew past the park again. No, I moaned as the church flew past as well, and I could see the intersection coming up again, but I didn't dare look down the side street. I just kept my foot to the floor as it whizzed by. The speedometer rose to 80 and I spared a split-second glance at the gas gauge. Oh God, was all that could wheeze out from between my lips. Somehow, in the span of time from my last turnaround, so much gas had been used up that there was only 2 bars left. The distance to empty read 10 miles. No, 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 no. I began bleeding out like a mantra as the park again came into view. I refused to lift my foot, but this time, I shot a glance to the right as the intersection flew by. My fears were confirmed as with the split-second glance that I had showed that the thing was now closer to the main road than it had been before, all the streetlights on the road having gone out. The speedometer was now at 90, and tears began to fall from my face as the park, church, and side street kept flying by over and over again, disappearing and reappearing in the fog like a vintage film background. Each time that it repeated, it was closer and closer. When I had passed by it again, it was now standing at the very edge of the intersection, so close that I could hear its laughter filter through my closed windows and over the roar of my engine. As I looked down and saw the speedometer break 100 miles an hour, I glanced up to see it standing in the middle of the intersection. The lights in it had gone out, and all I could still see was its glowing eyes. Screaming again, I jerked the wheel to the right, almost sending the car into a spin. The headlights for a moment illuminated the demonic visage hidden in the fog and darkness, and if they had stayed a microsecond longer, my mind would have broken. Even now, I can't recall the exact details. It feels like my head will split in half if I tried to. But the car barely missed it, and I heard the sound of its laughter change into a cry of rage, of indignation. I felt something strike the left rear of the car, and I fumbled to keep it on the road. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I saw the gold and red eyes disappear into the fog, and I felt the tears flow freely from my eyes as I knew that I couldn't avoid it a second time. In my head, I made the decision that if I saw everything pass by again, I would aim straight for the thing this time. If I was going out, I sure as heck was going to try and take it with me. I braced myself
Hey, that's
to
the
see
spirit.
in church again. However, I was filled with shock when I saw the sign for the AutoZone light up in the intersection in front of me. What? Was all that I could manage out as I flew through the intersection and past it, and the Rite Aid, and the sandwich shop. I glanced down at the dash and saw that I was doing 110 as the Walmart flew by on my left. Was this a trick? The answer came as I saw the lights of the gas station that I had left flicker through the lifting fog. Yes, the ground fog was beginning to lift. I began to laugh softly, still crying as I let my foot off the accelerator. My laugh sounded almost insane as I braked and pulled back into the gas station. I put the car in park and turned the engine off, my body shaking uncontrollably. I buried my face in my hands until a rap on the window caused me to shriek out and fumble for the keys. It's here. It was a trick. It wasn't. It was the attendant. He motioned for me to roll my window down, and I slowly did. Hey, you got back here just in time. The computers are back. He stopped as he caught sight of the state of me. Hey, you okay, buddy? He asked gently, putting a hand on the door sill. I mean, what could I possibly say? If I told him the truth as much as I had wanted, he never would have believed me. I mean, heck, I wouldn't have believed me, unless I had just gone through what I had. I wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my jacket and pulled out the 220s that I had, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Yeah, I stammered a bit. Just had a near miss on the road and it scared the hell out of me. I held out the money to him. Can I just get $40 of regular, please? He took the money, still looking hard at me, and then looked at the rear of my car. Looks like you had more than just a near miss, he finally said. I stared at him in confusion, and he gestured for me to get out of the car and look. I stepped out on shaky legs, and thankfully, I had the door to grab onto as they almost gave out on me as I saw what he had meant. He dug into the left rear quarter panel of the car, and just behind the gas cap were 3 tears in the metal. They were deep and evenly spaced out. No, not tears, I realized as I stared at them. Claw marks. I kept staring at them as the attendant filled my car up, and then snapped out of it as he handed me my receipt, giving me a last hard look as he did. As I turned to get back in the car, he called out one final thing. Try not to drive in the fog again. I've seen too many people get taken by it. I turned back to ask him what he had meant, but he had already shut the door to his booth. Now it's a few days later. I know I'll never understand what I stumbled upon or what that thing was, and frankly, I don't want to. I already deal with enough nightmares from the little that I experienced, nor do I know how I got away. But when I see the ground fog roll in now, like I did that night, I close my blinds up tight and stay inside. And I will never drive late at night again. I won't tell you not to, but if you do, please be careful. And whatever you do, don't drive when the ground fog rolls in.
Not bad, but also not realistic. Not once did he bring up that there was like a fucking what you calls it, a person with annoyingly bright high beams. Classified mission to another reality. Did I? Yeah, we listened to that. Yeah. Listen to that.
Nobody tells you how fast your life can come crashing down around you. Nobody ever mentions that you can expect one of the most joyful days of your life and have it end as the worst day on earth. It's been 1 year since that happened to me, and I fully expect the downhill tumble to continue for the rest of my life. We looked forward to this day for 9 months. Finding out Lori was pregnant was one of the best things to ever happen to us. We were young, not quite ready to be parents, maybe. But was anybody ever really ready for that? Bringing a kid into the world is never an easy thing, but we were determined to give our child the life that neither of us had. One where they were loved unconditionally and kept safe from the evils of the world. And getting to the hospital that day was a blur, but both of us were over the moon that the time was finally here. There was nothing that we looked forward to more than meeting our daughter, our little Josephine. Labor lasted about 5 hours, Lori giving it her all to push and bring our baby into this world. When she was born, something was wrong immediately. The doctors were scrambling, mentioning something about the umbilical cord getting wrapped around her neck as she came out.
Hey, I know a guy that had that issue when he was born. He's kind of a fucking douchebag freak.
Beginning to perform whatever life-saving procedures they could as we looked on in horror. After a minute of watching,
okay, freak is a bit too much, but he was a douchebag.
The nurse
Like some kind of severe version of autism or something. I don't know. I was roommates with him. That did not last long.
They were a whirlwind. Everything went crazy so fast, and within an hour, my wife and daughter were both gone. I had to walk out into the waiting room where both of our parents were expecting good news. I think my mom realized as soon as she saw me that something was off, running to hug me and setting me down in a nearby chair before I collapsed. Tears wouldn't even flow, just empty, numb feelings that were hollowing out my chest as I told them what had happened. Lori's mom broke down first, letting out pained gasps as she screamed for her daughter. My mom could only hold me as the tears eventually began to flow. I got to hold my daughter for a few minutes, her cold body pressed to my chest as I told her how much I loved her, and that her mother would be there to take care of her, wherever they may be. The hospital doctors met with me, told me that they were so sorry for my losses, but I couldn't even comprehend.
Oh wait, shit, the baby died?
All I could do was hold a little Josephine close and kiss her forehead.
Or did the mom die?
I had to somehow bring them back.
Or did they both die? Wait, what?
The next days and weeks blurred into each other. Work gave me time off for the first few days.
Oh, okay. It sounds like they both died.
To honor my paternity leave due to the complications surrounding the birth. Apparently, you only get time off if you get a healthy baby, not if you have to grieve the child that you've lost. Stress was on.
Okay, I guess the baby died.
A bill a few days later for nearly
$500,000. That's fucked up.
Then and there reading it, seeing a line item charge for
bruh.
after birth.
America, fuck yeah.
$1,000 alone. To think holding what was my own child would cost $5,000 and nearly broke my brain in grief. They were monetizing my own traumatic loss for their own gain, and the insurance companies apparently refused to cover it since again, it wasn't an actual healthy birth. They told me to just take it up with the hospital, and like they would do anything. All of that was a year ago. I started drinking. I don't know exactly when, but it helped to numb the pain that I was feeling. Work asked me to come back, and I ended up telling them to go screw themselves. We had a decent little nest egg of savings that we had built up, expecting most of it to go towards Josephine after she was born. Instead, it went towards booze. I spent the year as a ghost, drunk for days at a time on benders, sitting in the nursery that we had painted together, in the crib that would never be slept in, boxes of diapers sitting unused, cans of formula that wouldn't be eaten. This house was like a mausoleum to the family that I had lost.
Bro, just give it to someone else then. Stop keeping it around as a momentum to fucking bum yourself out. Like,
I don't know what
jeez.
woke me from my drunken sleep at first. The house shaking or my phone blaring a loud and high-pitched alert. I was passed out on the nursery rocking chair, phone on the floor beside me and an empty bottle in my lap. Acid was coming up from my stomach. Head pounding as
That's called acid reflux, my friend. I suffer from that every night.
At first, I thought it was just the withdrawal.
Even the medicine or whatever that I use to try and counteract that shit, it's like, whenever I'm laying on my right side, hella burning. But if I lay on my left side, we're chill. Except for, I don't like sleeping on my left side, so, yeah. It's a lose-lose situation.
Seismic activity reported. Seek shelter immediately and await further notices. Earthquakes in South Georgia. What's going on? Wiping my eyes, I tried getting up but nearly stumbled over my own unsteady feet as the ground rushed up to meet me. The entire house shaking didn't do me any favors either. Desperately clambering on all fours, I tried to stand, hoping to get my balance by grabbing onto the empty crib. Finally, I was able to make my way over to the window, yanking open the blinds. Overcast skies met me, nearly blinding despite all the clouds covering the sun. The rest of the neighborhood was still being shaken, though it seemed to happen in a rhythm as opposed to a constant tremor running through the land. Whatever it was causing an immense amount of damage already. The roads were cracking, and from the looks of the neighbor's house, there was already structural damage. Homes here were built for hurricanes, not earthquakes, and just a small one was going to be enough to screw a lot of us over. Over the distance in the direction of the coast, smoke was billowing into the air. That definitely wasn't good. Likely some of the tourist shops at the waterfront or worse, the downtown area. Everything down there was crowded together, and a fire in one of the shops would probably take half of them down if somebody didn't respond in time. Suddenly, the smoke started rising further, curling into the sky and going higher and higher until it looked over everything in the distance. As it finally stopped rising, the darkness began to swirl, almost like it was a snake coiling and ready to strike. I swear that it was writhing, moving, and pulsating as more smoke from the ground had joined it. Suddenly, though, the smoke stopped rising from the ground, the last of it joining the swirl in the sky. Suddenly, the alert came again on my phone, shrill and cutting through the sounds of still air and deafening silence. I fumbled for a moment, grabbing my phone to view the nearest message. Emergency alert. Strange phenomena is being reported over your area. Stay indoors, find shelter. Do not walk in open areas. Weird. I looked up from my phone, gazing back outside, and noticed that some of the smoke from the giant cloud was now falling in trails towards the ground. Sporadically, but there were probably hundreds beginning to reach out from the massive, dark, rolling smoke, like it was trying to return to the ground. My head was still pounding, butting its way back to the front of my mind, away from the strange smoke high in the sky. I need to grab a drink to get the pounding to stop. I need to calm my shaking hands. I walked into the kitchen, grabbing my first drink of the morning before heading into the living room and flipping on the television. An emergency broadcast was on, showing the worried face of two news anchors. Authorities are advising that you remain indoors, as the smoke is yet to be determined as hazardous or not. As we learn more, we'll bring you the latest details. The female anchor was saying, Yes, if you're just tuning in, there has been an earthquake through the coastal area. After the earthquake, which registered as a 5.6 magnitude, strange smoke from an unknown location began to rise into the sky. Nobody can quite pinpoint where it came from, but it's now hanging over the city. A male anchor said this time. As he spoke, the female anchor put a hand to her ear, listening intently to somebody speaking from the studio. This just in, she stammered, looking more terrified than before. We have word that the smoke is hostile. It seems to be picking up those it sees on the ground and taking them. We're not sure how it does it, but reports of citizens being taken are coming in. This comes on top of the mysterious disappearances that have been reported this morning, with many insisting that they saw people suddenly vanish into thin air. These disappearances are still being investigated by the authorities, but they have said that everyone should remain indoors. The heck? I went to the window, looking out once more at the massive smoke that now looked like dark black clouds in the sky. Sure enough, the tendrils were extending further down to the ground, and as more reached out, some were coming back. My eyesight, as good as it was, felt tricked. The ones returning had masses on the end, limp as they were pulled even higher into the sky. People. Please, for your safety, stay in your homes. We don't know how long it will take for this to pass, but authorities are pleading that citizens try to stay safe. Hide in a basement or an interior room if available, away from windows. Do not go outside for any reason. My brain wasn't really comprehending what was going on. Not like I had plans to go out today anyway. But well, this was just odd. Nothing made sense. For a while, I just stood at the window wondering if I was actually still asleep in the rocking chair. Maybe I had choked in my sleep and this was some kind of purgatory, or I made it straight to hell. Wouldn't be surprised if my luck tumbled out that way. Lose everything you've got in life, descend into a spiral of depression where you would rather die than be alive, and then end up in hell. That's, well, if it's worse than the life I was living, remains to be seen. I grabbed another couple of drinks and I hid in the bathroom. Figure if worse comes to worse.
Actually, taking a piss, grabbing a beer.
Maybe pass
I'll
out myself and wake up to
rewind this back 2 minutes when I get back.
I'll keep an eye on my phone just in case anything else develops, but I've got my plans for the day now. Moving into the bathroom, I settled into the dry tub, laying down on the cool porcelain and letting out a sigh of relief. It was hot out and the inside temperature was quickly catching up, so any bit of cool felt nice on the skin. Cracking open the beer in my hand, I set the other one down on the floor beside the tub, opening my phone to check the news. There was surprisingly little available. Just the same emergency alert about staying indoors, but no mention of the tendrils coming off the thing. No mention of people being snatched off the streets. Just inclement weather and a recommendation to seek shelter until it passes. Odd, but maybe it just hadn't caught up to the reality of the situation yet. There wasn't much else to do, so I eventually opened up a game and kept drinking. A couple of hours passed. I'm finally sufficiently toasted and the headache is gone. My phone was starting to die though, so it was time to leave the safety of my bathtub. Oh, getting up was rough, and my back apparently didn't take kindly to the hard tub surface and sleeping in the rocking chair the night before. Everything was creaky, joints popping as I left the room and opened the door. A baby's crying reached me faintly when I had opened it. Freezing in my tracks, I looked around, wondering where that could be coming from. None of my neighbors had a kid, at least that I was aware of, but it sounded closer than that. The crying got louder as I walked towards the front of the house, looking flowers past. Available develops. The accent I hid in the bathroom. Figure if worse comes to worse, I kill this headache and pass the time. Maybe pass out myself and wake up to this all being over. I'll keep an eye on my phone just in case anything else develops, but I've got my plans for the day now. Moving into the bathroom, I settled into the dry tub, laying down on the cool porcelain and letting out a sigh of relief. It was hot out and the inside temperature was quickly catching up, so any bit of cool felt nice on the skin. Cracking open the beer in my hand, I set the other one down on the floor beside the tub, opening my phone to check the news. There was surprisingly little available. Just the same emergency alert about staying indoors, but no mention of the tendrils coming off the thing. No mention of people being snatched off the streets. Just inclement weather and a recommendation to seek shelter until it passes. Odd, but maybe it just... hadn't caught up to the reality of the situation yet. There wasn't much else to do, so I eventually opened up a game and kept drinking. A couple of hours passed. I'm finally sufficiently toasted and the headache is gone. My phone was starting to die though, so it was time to leave the safety of my bathtub. Oh, getting up was rough, and my back apparently didn't take kindly to the hard tub surface and sleeping in the rocking chair the night before. Everything was creaky, joints popping as I left the room and opened the door. A baby's crying reached me faintly when I had opened it. Freezing in my tracks, I looked around, wondering where that could be coming from. None of my neighbors had a kid, at least that I was aware of, but it sounded closer than that. The crying got louder as I walked towards the front of the house, looking carefully around to make sure that nothing was in the house with me. Stopping by the front window, I could finally see where the crying was coming from. There was a baby's bassinet sitting on the sidewalk outside, crying coming from inside of it. Next to it was a woman, dark auburn hair billowing around her face as the wind whipped the hospital gown that she was wearing. "Lori?" I whispered, unsure what I was seeing. That hair, the body, that was my wife out there, standing on the sidewalk in front of her house. Our baby likely laying in the bassinet right next to her. I couldn't see her face, but I knew that it had to be her. God, to see her again. I froze in place for a minute, unsure of what to do. Maybe I really was dead, or stuck in hell. But God, if this was hell, then it was beautiful. They were so close, all I had to do was go outside. And that was around the time I started noticing the people lined up in front of the other houses on the block. At least every other house had somebody in front of it, just standing there. None of their faces were visible, almost like they were blurred out. Like on television when somebody needs their identity protected. Still though, it was odd, seeing everybody just waiting patiently. As I watched, Paula, the elderly woman who lives across the road, began to walk out. The person standing in front of her home wasn't someone that I recognized. He was young with a full head of dark black hair, slicked back and clean cut, wearing dress blues from the military. A couple of medals were shining on his chest as he slowly stepped out onto the porch, shouting something that I couldn't quite hear. To be honest, the baby's crying was still going, making it hard to focus on anything else. Paula walked closer to the man on the sidewalk, holding up a hand towards him as she approached. I could see her lips moving, tears forming in her eyes as she talked to the man on the sidewalk. He made no move to respond, but I could see that something else was starting to happen. As she approached, something about the man began to change. He was stretching, becoming a distorted version of the man there only moments before, as a thin black tendril began to widen over him. Paula got closer as the man opened his arms wide, welcoming her into his open arms like a long-lost friend. My phone was going off again. Another alert. I looked away from Paula and the scene unfolding outside for a moment to pull the phone from my pocket and glance at the screen. Emergency alert to all survivors. Do not interact with the dead. Oh no, I have to warn her. I have to give her a signal to run. As I looked up though, it was already too late. Paula staggered into the man's embrace, putting her own arms around him, only for the man to suddenly poof into smoke. The cloud suddenly enveloped her, a tendril wrapping around Paula's body and squeezing tight. I swear that I could almost see her eyes pop out of her head as it began to lift her from the ground, pulling her up into the sky rapidly towards the main mass of smoke. She tried to scream, but the last of the air in her lungs was quickly squeezed out as the tendril gripped tighter. After a moment, she was gone, absorbed into the black cloud above as it churned and grew. I dropped down below the window, hiding from the screaming baby and terrifying visage of my wife, standing just a few feet from the front door. When they moved, I don't know, but they were now at least halfway up the walkway to the house, reaching ever closer to the front door. Good God, could they come inside? If the smoke was able to lift a fully grown woman into the air with such ease, then opening a door probably wouldn't be too far out of the realm of possibility. Before I knew what I was doing, there were chairs and a desk piled in front of the door, a makeshift barricade to keep them from getting through to me. I was nearly breathless by the time that I finished getting it all in place, and God knows if I would actually be able to stop them from getting through, if that thing really put its mind to it. But it was worth a shot, right? My phone started ringing. Lori's mom. Talk about bad timing for my mother-in-law to call when her dead daughter is walking towards my door to yank me into the sky. Mel, you okay? I asked upon answering. I could hear Melanie on the other line crying, loud sobs that were nearly hysterical.
Oh, Harrison, I'm okay. Are you safe?
She was asking through labored breaths. Whatever was happening over there, she wasn't taking it very well.
Lori's here.
Every hair in my body stood up like I had touched a live wire. Yeah, she's here too, I muttered, unsure of what else to say. It's not her, Mel, you know that.
No, she can't be. Her and Josephine are right at the front door. They say they're sorry that they were gone for so long.
She replied, the sobbing turning from fear to something like bewilderment.
Oh, poor Josephine has to be sweating out there in this heat. I think I'm going to let them in.
No! I nearly screamed into the phone. Mel, that's not Lori and it's not Josephine either. You can't let them in.
Don't you dare tell me not to let my own daughter in.
Her voice turned cold.
She would still be here if it wasn't for you.
That was kind of the breaking point for me. There's no more to say after that. I hung up the phone. If she lets them in, well, then that's on her. I can't say that it isn't having an effect on me, though. Over the past year, I've asked myself all kinds of questions about if I could have done something different. What if my genes had caused what had happened to Josephine? Did I indirectly contribute to my wife's death? God, is it really my fault that I'm left here alone, with nothing but their ghosts made of smoke outside to taunt me? Maybe it is better if I just walk outside right now and let that thing take me. It's not like I haven't been living for the past year anyway, drinking myself to death, cowardly hoping that the alcohol would kill me since I was too much of a baby to do it myself. Now the only two people that I've ever loved more than myself were basically welcoming me into death outside my front door, and I was still too scared to take them up on that offer. I'm spiraling. Josephine won't stop screaming outside, and I swear to God that I can hear Lori's voice calling for me, asking me to let her in. It's time to feed the baby, Harry, she was saying through the door. She must have been right up next to it now, ready to come in as soon as there was the slightest hint of an opening. Oh, she's so hungry. Everything in me was screaming, torn between opening the door and embracing this thing that was pretending to be my dead wife, or trying for a desperate run out the back door. I probably wouldn't get too far considering the thing up there was picking people up off the streets as soon as it saw them. But what other choice is there? The car. Maybe it wasn't the best idea, but it was enough to get me out of this house and away from these ghosts of my dead family. Heck, if that thing wants to swoop down and take in the air while I'm driving, then at least I had a good run, I guess. This was it, though. I can't stay here any longer. I gotta find my keys first. Where the heck could they be? Let's see. When I last went out, I probably put them on the table in the living room. I scoured there, but no luck. Otherwise, crap. They were hanging right there by the front door, now blocked off by my improvised barricade of furniture. I was going to have to move some of it before I could even think about reaching the things. Meanwhile, Lori was still outside calling to me. Harry, please, it's hot out here. Josephine's hungry, I'm hungry. Please let us in. She was droning on. It was definitely her voice, but something was off. She had always been more of a bright talker, joy in every sentence. The kind of person that lights up a conversation with positivity, even when you're talking about the most mundane things on earth. But instead, her voice was flat now, with no sign of that joy anywhere to be found. hollow, empty words floating through the door to entice me out as our child cried right beside her. In a way, Josephine crying kind of helped me keep my composure at this point. Lori was one of the most determined people when it came to being a mom, and that drive to be the best was something that she was constantly showing before our daughter was ever born. No way she would just be standing there while our girl was crying right beside her, doing nothing to try and console the angry child. I noticed a faint sound of the doorknob being moved, realizing that she was probably trying to turn it from the outside. Thank God I thought to lock the door and deadbolt it first. Slowly, trying not to make any noise that would betray what I was doing, I began to move the barricade bit by bit, hoping to clear just enough for me to reach my keys. From the nearby window, I could see the smoke in the sky now stretching out to cover miles and miles of open air, billowing even darker than it was before. Was it gaining strength from feeding on people? God help us if it decided to change after it was finally full. The thing seemed nigh unstoppable as it is. I can't imagine what it would be like after it actually had some energy in it. My blood ran cold as I pulled the third chair from the pile, ever so slowly, and the remaining two suddenly shifted. They fell with a crash, one hitting me directly in the shin as it came down. I hopped back, holding my leg and trying not to curse out loud as I laid eyes on what was happening in front of me. A thin, barely visible strand of smoke was coming in through the crack under the door, extending itself into the locking mechanism and jiggling it around. As the chairs fell, the deadbolt slid open. Crap, crap, I muttered, letting go of my now aching leg and starting to panic. I threw myself over the remaining chairs, clawing at the keys on their hanger. They came off, clattering to the floor before sliding under the desk as I dove after them. The door began to open. Oh, Harry. Laurie's voice came through the small crack in the door. More of the humanity was leaving it bit by bit. There was something underneath her voice, guttural and ancient. It sounded pained, like an elderly person with lung cancer struggling to speak on their deathbed. Oh, she's waited so long to meet you. Josephine's crying grew louder as the smoke began to creep through the opening of the doorway. I fumbled under the desk, desperately feeling for the keys even as they evaded my grasp. My hand finally slammed down on them, almost stabbing through my palm with the amount of force that I had behind it. As the door was forced open the rest of the way, I stood, backing away down the front hall as my wife stepped into our home for the first time since she had passed. The smell of death and burning flesh was overbearing as she came in, permeating the air in a thick blanket the moment that she had entered the room. Everything around her seemed to get darker, all the lights in the house barely doing anything to illuminate her figure. It was the exact opposite of how she lit up a room when she was alive. Instead, draining the light from every corner as if she could only survive in the darkness. As she got closer to me, I could finally see why she would want to keep it dark. Our baby was in her arms, but this wasn't the woman that I had married. Her face wasn't there. Instead, a charred, still smoldering slate of dark ashes stared me down, twin embers where her eyes should be. I almost felt the heat on my skin as she looked at me, burning into me with her gaze of fire. "I've missed you," she whispered, the voice becoming more guttural, less like her as she dropped the baby. Whatever was supposed to be Josephine poofed as it hit the ground, the smoke quickly making a move towards me as I continued stepping backwards. That was my cue to get the heck away from there, darting off into the kitchen and towards the garage door into the waiting car. I nearly tore the car door off just trying to open it. I could see her slowly making her way towards the garage door and through the kitchen, not taking steps to reach closer to me but gliding along the floor, like the ghost that had been haunting me since she had died. My wife was coming for me, and months ago, I probably would have gladly thrown myself into her embrace, despite the smell of flames and death she brought with her. Now, though, all I could think was that I wanted to get the heck out of here. Get away from this tomb of a house and away from whatever was watching us from the sky, desperate to devour me whole along with the rest of the town. That wasn't Lori. Lori was dead, and I've known that for months now. I've accepted that. This is some kind of demon. The garage door slid up slowly as I started the car, looking back every couple of seconds to the doorway and seeing her getting ever closer. The mechanical door barely got halfway up before I decided that was enough, throwing the car into drive and punching the pedal through the floorboard. The car tires squealed as they hit pavement, and I could hear the metal door scraping against the roof above me, making my ears almost retreat into my head from the awful screeching. But I finally made it out. Turning the wheel sharp, I got onto the road just as Lori appeared in the rear view, floating along much faster in her attempt to catch me. Too late though, I was off. Despite being in a more residential neighborhood, I didn't let off the gas. Not like there were any kids playing outside right now to be wary of or anything. No, I floored it, and going almost 70 through the winding curves as I made my way towards the highway. If anything, I could get out of town and far away from whatever this was. Looking up in the sky almost immediately killed that idea for me though. Whatever was up there was changing, molding into a different shape as the smoke rolled and billowed around in the wind. More and more tendrils were extending down, and I swear it looked like the main mass was moving closer to the ground as I went. Before long, I was out of the neighborhood and onto the main highway going through town. It was mostly empty, though the occasional abandoned car was scattered on and off the road like their drivers had been taken out of the car while they were speeding along. The sky continued to grow darker, reminding me of the dozens of hurricanes that had come and gone while I had lived here. Except, this was still eerie, with no light rain beginning to fall as the storm moved in. Instead, the clouds settled ever closer to the ground, beginning to obscure the distance like a thick black fog covering everything like a blanket. I could smell rot and ash as it got thicker, nearly swallowing up the car. The engine sputtered and died within moments of being surrounded by smoke. Everything gave out, and instead of coasting to a stop, I felt the car suddenly jerk to a halt, like it was being grabbed. I gotta get out. Gotta find shelter somewhere, but where? The smoke was getting thicker, and I almost choked on the smell of sulfur that was permeating the air now along with it. Opening my door, I rolled out onto the road, trying to keep low and do my best to stay away from the thick smog covering everything. I felt the earth tremble again for a brief moment before a shockwave suddenly hit, air blasting the car behind me through empty space and into a tree on the opposite side of the road. I reached out, grabbing onto a sewer grate on the curb nearby, holding on for dear life as the smoke swirled, now mixing with dust and debris as something made impact with the earth. The next thing I know, I'm flying right alongside the debris, being tossed away from the road. I hit a tree and I heard something inside me snap. I'm not sure how long it's been. My ears are ringing and I can't see straight. Trees are snapped off at the base right near me. It hurts to pick my head up and look around. The ground is above me. No wait, I'm upside down. What am I hanging on to? Looking down, I see it. A tree branch impaling me right through my stomach on the right side. It's not very thick, but enough that pulling it out is going to be extremely painful. I've got to move though. Wait, where's the smoke? The sky isn't dark black anymore, but a deep red. There's no sign of the smoke anywhere. Nowhere around me is even hazy. Did it all get blown away in the blast? What made that in the first place? Did they try to nuke it maybe? No, there would have been a flash before everything happened. As it is, looking around me, there didn't seem to be any mushroom blood or anything that would designate signs of warfare. Maybe it left on its own. The earth shook again, making me scream in pain as the tree that I was impaled on shook as well. God, what could be causing it? I can barely look around anytime I stretch my head at the wound in my chest screams in pain. I don't think I can pull this out without bleeding out on the ground below me, if I even make it that far before dying. Jesus, Lori, I might see you soon. The roar rings out again with another massive tremor following. The branch creaks under my weight, threatening to give out and send me careening to the ground. I try to wiggle, seeing if I can get off of it bit by bit. The ground is probably 5 feet below me. Not that far, but far enough that it's going to hurt. Inch by inch, I wiggle, screaming in pain the entire time, gritting my teeth to the point where I hear a molar crack and to feel a couple of pops in my jaw. Every agonizing second of it brings me closer to falling through empty space and landing on the bare dirt below. The tremors continue, rhythmically moving like footsteps, one after the other. I'm almost there. Maybe 3 more inches of the branch between me and freedom. I don't know what's going to await me after my fall, though, so this last heave could very well be it. It's strange. Before I make the final push, I swear that I can see somebody walking in the distance, coming my way. Maybe they were caught up in the shockwave too. Maybe they'll be able to even help me get out of here. God knows that I'm going to have to crawl. I mean, which way do I even go? The next tremor and my repositioning are too much for the branch to handle. I feel a snap as it breaks under me, interrupting my thoughts. For a brief moment, I feel relief as all my own weight is no longer working against gravity inside of me. Instead, it's replaced with more pain a second later as I land, forcing the rest of the branch through as it makes contact with the ground, pushing it right back in the same direction that I tried to wiggle off from, and doing untold damage as I'm left shrieking in pain on the ground. Everything goes white as the pain takes over, blinding me while I look up at the red sky. It's the same color as my blood, soaking the end of the broken limb, now protruding into the sky above me. My screams are immediately drowned out by another roar as I look on, finally seeing what the source of the tremors and noise is. It was behind me when I was on the tree, unable to look around without feeling the screaming agony, but I almost wish that I was still up there after witnessing what was about to be the end of me. Towering into the sky, hundreds of thousands of meters to the point where it would break the cloud cover if there was any, was a beast. It stood on 4 legs, each as thick as 4 skyscrapers smashed together, and just as tall. Large, chunky scales worked their way up the ashen skin, with thick lines of glowing molten red showing where the gaps were between them. The torso was sturdy with more of the scales piling on it, each layering on top of each other to cover its huge chest. The head, though, it was human, at least the approximation of a human. Its face was blank and nearly featureless, but the eyes, nose, and mouth were right there without any sort of hair to make them differentiate. The eyes were massive themselves, just gazing blankly at the ground, surrounded by those same ashen scales. As it took more steps and turned, though, I could see its back towering into the sky as it began to rear up. More and more faces, each a different size, some massive and some so small that I could barely make them out, covered its back from top to bottom. Each one looked like someone else, but all had the same face of agony and pain, all screaming silently to the sky above to be put out of their misery. The beast roared again as it came crashing down, feet landing hard and sending another shockwave in every possible direction. I winced, preparing for it to hit me as I could see it coming fast, brushing through trees and kicking up dust as it roared closer. In the distance, the person I saw earlier was even closer though, and the wave of violence passed through them without knocking them down. All I could do was lay there and take the beating as it hit me, pelting me with loose debris and rocks as it passed. Dust filled my lungs, making me cough and sputter just trying to take a breath. When I looked up again, the figure was right there, Lori, holding our daughter in her arms. This time it wasn't some terrifying abomination made of smoke, though. It was actually her. God, she was glowing like the day she told me that she was pregnant. A huge smile on her face, lighting up my world against the backdrop of the crimson sky. She reached a hand out, her smile growing bigger as she looked into my eyes, and the beast roared again. I took her hand and immediately the pain faded away. Warmth enveloped my body, leaving me in peace, unfeeling of the agony that had been there just moments before, overwhelming every one of my senses. She pulled me from the ground effortlessly, enveloping me in a hug as we floated away. I didn't even notice it until I looked down to see the ground quickly fading beneath us, the great beast becoming smaller and smaller as we soared past it, far out of its reach, the crimson sky welcoming us as it turned to a bright, jovial blue. Our baby laughed in her arms, bringing me warmth. I don't know if this is the delusion of a dying man or if I'm really going to heaven, but I'm going to embrace it. I'm finally where I belong, not in pain, not in suffering, but at peace. Nelson Asada, die screaming, meat cashier, Talamagara, Leon Notch, Griffin, Eldridge, Sleepy Shrew, Donkey Ozarilla, Richard French, Nina Kidder, Mark Norman, Andrew Harrington, Swaggity Swoon, Ollie Rubik, Sonic GMD, STV, Rolly, Wayward Son, Caleb Windsor, Never Enough, Oxford Flow, Steve B7649, Ray Weingartner, Stephen King 04, Shrimp on Shrimp, Genevieve Sweet.
Listen to that. Have to speak to the river waves. I don't think I've listened to that yet.
The hilltop cottage was somehow even smaller than it looked online, but it made it feel more charming. Sunlight split generously through the mismatched windows, catching on the old brass fixtures and the worn but beautiful woodwork that ran along the door frames, while the garden was wild and overgrown in the best way, full of wild pollinator flowers for bees and tangled roses, with time creeping in through the cracks of the old stone path. It had flaws, but the price had been unbelievably low for what it was, and Mara was over the moon. "I love it," she beamed, arms spread like she was already embracing it. "And look at that view. It's like a painting. There are so many pretty places to take pictures of for my shop." She was right. Our view was stunning. Fields folded over each other in soft green swells, a thin river glinting with seams of silver, while the town itself sat low, a smudge of clustered rooftops nestled in the valley, ringed by more of those sleepy trees. I had told Mara it was a romantic reset. I used words like digital detox and back to basics, which she ate up. But what she didn't know was I was buried in debt so deep I couldn't see daylight. Cards, loans, sharks that keep lending, even when I had nothing left to prove I could pay them back. I'd bet our house as a final hope to get it all back. And I'd lost. This cottage was a cheap scapegoat. I just didn't know how long we could keep it up. The general store sat squat and low, as if it had grown there. Inside, it smelled like old wood and something sharp like vinegar or pickled onions. Mara was already halfway down to one of the narrow aisles, asking about local trails and making conversation the way she was always good at doing. The man she was talking to was in his late 50s, maybe older, with a weathered face and hands that looked too big for the delicate register he tapped with one knuckle. When he finally looked up, he did it slowly and grumpily, in that way that I assumed came with age. He looked at Mara, then me, and finally tilted his chin towards our new home. The Riverwives don't like being seen, he said. His voice was calm, but it felt rehearsed, especially not by young women. Mara paused, halfway through flipping a trail map over. The what? The ones by the river, he responded quickly. You'll know them if you see them. Don't let it get that far. And if you have to walk past the river, wear something that doesn't invite trouble. Cover up. Before we could ask what he meant, another man, a customer presumably, spoke from somewhere in the store. He's right, don't greet him in. Do your best to ignore him. Mara turned, frowning like she was trying to decide if this was a joke or some backwoods performance art. I watched as she folded the trail map with careful fingers, her mouth pressed into a polite, unreadable line. She didn't say anything, but the silence felt like it had teeth. She gave the man a short nod and stepped away, the trail map still clutched in her hand. At the far end of the counter, a woman looked up from a station behind the battered produce scale. Late 60s, maybe, with a pinched expression that made it hard to tell if she was squinting at something. She looked at Mara. Girls dress like that in the city, I'm sure, she said, sizing Mara up. But the river's not a place to be soft-hearted. She dropped a handful of apples into a paper bag and folded the top slowly. Some bits out here take advantage when you go offering bits of yourself without thinking. Mara smiled politely, but I could see the muscle working in her jaw. She wasn't the type to speak to strangers, so she gave a quick, "Of course," and turned to me. I caught her expression, the kind of look that meant, get me out of here before I say something I'll regret. Let's go, I said, already moving. Still need to get to the hardware shop before it shuts. Thank you for the advice. We stepped out into the sun, and Mara was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Bloody hell, she muttered. Cover up because my arms are out? It's 21 degrees and I'm wearing a nice sundress. Sorry for dressing like it's a warm day and not a funeral. She didn't wait for me to respond, just kept walking. I get that it's a small town, she said, but come on, offering bits of yourself, wear something that doesn't invite trouble. She made air quotes without slowing her pace. It's all just polite language and know your place, girl. Did you notice they didn't say a word to you? I did notice, I said, and yeah, it's daft. I glanced back at the shop, then ahead at the worn cobbles, tufts of grass poking through the gaps, and nettles crowding the edge of the road. These people have known each other forever. They've grown up together and seen each other through weddings, funerals and the lot. They've probably sat in the same pub with the same pint and the same complaints since the 70s. I kicked at a loose stone. We're just new faces to them. It doesn't matter what we say or how reasonable we know we sound. It's just us stepping into their town. That doesn't make what they said right. Just means it's not about us. I gave her a nudge with my elbow. You know, we could always bring a few soaps around to the shop. We give them something nice, they might start being nice back. That got the corner of her mouth to twitch. Just enough to call it a win. A few days in, I was still finding my rhythm, but Mara took to the countryside as if she'd always belonged in it. She was already in boots, basket looped over her arm, picking wild things from the hedgerow as she knew them by name. She dried bundles of herbs on twine, stretched across the kitchen window. Yarrow, mugwort, lavender, horsetail. Always something gently fragrant tucked beneath her ear. She sang when she worked, little hums and wordless melodies that carried through the house like incense and cheered me up as I worked remotely. Sometimes I'd find love notes folded and slipped into my coffee mug, tiny sketches of flowers or hearts, which felt great. Until I remembered the real reason we were here. I started going for early runs. Most mornings I was out the door before Mara was up, lacing my shoes on the doorstep while the sky was still waking. It gave me space to think properly. But no matter how far I went, I always ended up circling back to the same thought. I needed to tell her. And the longer I left it, the worse it would be. I'd lost our old life to a stupid, selfish mistake. I hadn't just messed up, I'd properly wrecked things. This cottage, this so-called fresh start, was damage control. And yet, she liked it here. She was happy, and part of me kept wondering if I told her now, would she be furious enough to leave? Or would she stay because, despite everything, something good had come out of the mess? I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't keep dodging it forever. One of the first few mornings, I decided to try a different path. I was still working out which ones were worth the mud and which ones didn't leave you stuck 2 fields from where you meant to be. This one dipped through a patch of larch and followed the river for a bit. I hadn't been that way before. It was colder down there. Damp hung heavy in the air and caught in your throat. And in the mornings, there was a fog that thickened the closer you got to the river's path. I spotted some figures in the fog. There were women standing knee-deep in the river, backs turned, half lost between the trees and the fog. They seemed to be barefoot. Their dresses hung soaked and heavy, clinging to their legs, headscarves knotted tight, not a strand of hair showing. They moved in silence, slowly and steadily scrubbing stained fabric against old wooden washboards. One of them lifted a strip of cloth, wet and heavy. She twisted it with both hands, and red water trickled out. Then, my foot went out from under me. I went down hard, knee first onto the path. Pain shot up my legs sharp enough to make me swear out loud. My palms followed, scraping against the grit and shaving away my skin. I stayed down for a second, catching my breath. When I looked, blood was already starting to soak through the fabric of my joggers.
Fuck.
When I limped back into the kitchen, Mara was already at the counter, hanging another row of drying bundles in the window while she made breakfast. She turned, took one look at my leg, then my top, and frowned. "What the hell happened to you?" "River path," I said. "Slipped." She eyed the bloodied streaks down my trousers, the stubborn stains spreading beneath the fabric. She touched the hem gently, then looked at me for a moment. "Lucky you," she said. "I made a new bar yesterday. It's good for blood. Could pull that out nicely." She moved to the shelf and peeled back the linen from the stack of pale grey soap bars, all the same size and shape, more than she usually made in one go. I frowned. "You planning a bulk sale I didn't know about?" She didn't answer, too preoccupied with ensuring her food didn't burn. She passed it to me like she hadn't heard the question. Use cold water first, she said. Always cold. Heat sets it in. Then scrub it out with this. Work it into it. Let it sit a bit. She didn't offer to do it for me, which was strange for her. Was it the path by the bend? She asked, almost offhandedly, where the fog rolls in. I nodded. She didn't look up. That's where the best wild yarrow grows. Loads of it, just before the river curves back inland. Some of it's already gone to seed, but I've still been able to find the good stuff. She stirred the pot on the stove, her wrist moving slowly and steadily. It's quiet out there, she said. I know what you're gonna say. Yes, I saw the river wives as they call them. Don't worry, she scoffed. I didn't bother them. But I still think it's mad that a town like this lets its oldest women stand out in the cold doing laundry like it's 1820. Bloody backwards if you ask me. There was a long pause as I recalled my encounter this morning. Yeah, you're right, I said. But it's not our place. Do you really need to go all the way out there for yarrow? I can pick it up for you on my runs if you want. She turned slowly. I like it here, she said. I love it actually, but I'm not stupid. You've seen how they talk to me, like I'm a child or a house cat. She set the spoon down, a bit harder than she probably meant to. I won't play small just because it makes this place more comfortable. I like my walks. I like finding things with my own two hands. I don't need someone fetching yarrow for me, like I'm some little wifey who's safer staying inside. All right, I said gently. I get it. I'm sorry. She sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Sorry, that wasn't aimed at you. Just all of it. This place is so beautiful until people start speaking that way. I stepped forward and rested a hand lightly on her back. She didn't pull away. You're right, I said quietly. You shouldn't have to shrink, not for anyone. She looked at me, and something softened behind her eyes. Her shoulders dropped a little. We moved here to grow, and instead, I'm supposed to fold up smaller. You won't, I said. Not with me, not ever. She leaned into my chest with a soft, exhausted sigh, and I wrapped my arms around her, careful of the herbs still tied at her hip. I like that you worry, she murmured. Just don't make it delicate. I'm not. I know, I said. You're a bloody force. That got a quiet laugh. She pressed her forehead into my shoulder and let it sit there for a few seconds longer. Then she pulled away and gave my leg a glance. You'd better get scrubbing, by the way. If you let that set, I'm not making a second batch. Noted, I said. Cold water, firm scrubbing, let it sit. Got it. She gave me a mock stern nod and went back to her pot. I waited a few days before running again. My knee still twinged when I bent it too far, but I told myself the ache was good. It meant I was healing. It was early again, and the fog thickened as I got closer, just like last time. This time, however, I was determined to see what was past the river. And, as I'd expected, they were there again. The same women in soaked dresses, dragging the soaking clothes against the washboard. But this time, one of them turned slightly, like she'd heard me coming. Her face stayed hidden, just enough that the scarf blocked everything but the curve of her jaw. Would you be kind, she spoke, and give this one a twist? These old hands aren't what they used to be. She held up a sodden sheet. It was dark and dripping. She turned it slightly in her hands. It hung limp and lifeless, the water sliding off in long, reluctant ropes, There was something in the way she asked, though I couldn't put my finger on it. So I stopped. The fog pressed against my back. The only sound was the slow drag of fabric and the slap of water on stone. The birdsong had long disappeared. My fingers twitched like they might move on their own, and I shuffled my feet forward. But then I noticed her arms. They were pale and bloated, way past the usual prune from water. Then I noticed the folds of the dress near her wrists were torn in places, like the fabric had been picked at. And the sheet. It wasn't clean. The water sliding off it was thick and red, too heavy looking to just be mud. "Come on, love," she said again, voice softer this time. "You've got young arms. I've had awful joint pain lately, and a terrible bit of rheumatism in the elbows. It just needs a twist." She gave the sheet a small, hopeful jiggle, like that would draw me closer. She still didn't look at me, which bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I don't know why, but it made my skin crawl. There was something unnatural about someone asking you for help without ever meeting your eyes. "My wrists have been locking up something terrible," she added, as if it hurt just to say. "All this damp in the air, worse than it used to be. You'd be doing me a kindness." The other women didn't react. They continued dragging their fabrics against the washboard, like I wasn't even there. The words from the general store came crawling back. "Eyes low, don't greet them, don't offer anything." I thought it was cruel the first time, rude for the sake of it. But at that moment, it felt like advice was passed on with caution. Still, I hesitated. Because what if she really was just some old woman in the cold water, soaked to the skin, wrists giving out from years of doing this exact motion? What if I was being the bad guy here, watching her struggle and walking away like it could cost me something? I began. "Oh, sod it then," she snapped at my voice. "Suit yourself." The shift in the tone shocked me. It wasn't the sort of hurt you'd expect from being turned down. It was snappy and impatient, like she dropped something and blamed me for not catching it. "Not even a moment for an old woman with bad arms," she hissed, more to the river than me. "What a thing, to watch someone struggle and turn your back on them. Must be nice being young and quick. Men are so bloody selfish." I clenched my jaw. Heat flared across my face from embarrassment. A few days ago, Mara had practically bitten my head off for offering to help. Now, some old hag in a river made me feel like the villain for not pitching in. I didn't know what the hell women wanted anymore. I decided to stay silent and let the fog have the last word. I turned back to the path and let my feet do what they came here to do. Move. My breathing evened out as I picked up my speed. The rest of the trail cut through thickets and a small patch of pine. The cold stuck to my skin, and the sound of the river grew faint behind me. And I...
Taking a piss, BRB.
Let it fade.
We had to do a little experiment where we like made a wolf like howling noise, see if the little puppies would howl. I got them to do it earlier.
I felt off, like the run had taken something out of me. My legs ached, my fingers felt stiff, and there was a throb in the back of my head that hadn't been there when I left.
Alright.
I skipped breakfast, took a shower so hot it should have scalded. Still, it barely did anything. By late afternoon, I was curled up on the sofa under a blanket, useless. Mara came in from the garden with dirt on her knees and a fresh bundle of herbs in one hand. That's me sorted for a few months. She was slightly wet from getting caught in sudden rain. She glanced at me, taking in my pale face, then back at the kettle near the fire. "You're not running tomorrow." "I wasn't planning to," I said. My voice came out hoarse, like I'd been shouting when I hadn't said much of anything. "You look like a washed-out sock," she said, crouching to stoke the fire back to life. "Bit of man flu?" "Something like that." She didn't press and set the kettle above the fire more carefully than usual and sat beside me, still smelling like rosemary and wet grass. "Maybe your body's trying to tell you something," she said quietly, "that you keep pushing into places that you don't want to." I didn't answer. I didn't know how to, really. She didn't know it, but she was spot on. She passed me a cup of tea she hadn't asked if I wanted. Strong, slightly bitter, the kind she made when I was sick. "You resting tomorrow?" she asked again, gently this time. "Yeah," I said. "I'm staying in. We can have a lie-in together." She smiled, but kept a distance. "Absolutely not," she said. "I make soaps, not cures. The last thing I need is catching whatever this is and sneezing over my stock." I gave a weak laugh, half into the tea. Wow, no bedside manner. She grinned. not in the job description. You want sympathy, you'll have to bribe me with biscuits. Then you'll get some tea and toast in bed, if you're lucky. The next morning, the sun woke me up before I was ready. It poured through the thin curtains in strips, warm across my face. Nice, actually. One of those rare moments where the light feels soft instead of sharp. I still felt awful, and it became clear that I sweated through the night, despite the fact that the sun's warmth and quiet made me feel like I could have maybe stayed like that for a while. I reached over, expecting to feel the softness of Mara's skin, but the bed was empty. The covers on Mara's side were flat and cold. I blinked up at the ceiling, confused for a second. I had been looking forward to tea and toast in bed, like she usually did when I had the man flu. I listened for her. The house had thin walls, you could hear everything in it. But there was nothing, just quiet. I sat up, slowly. My head swam with that awful, cotton wool in your skull kind of dizzy. Everything felt a bit too bright, a bit too sharp. My legs were heavy with fatigue, but I swung out of bed anyway, feet hitting the cold tile on the floor. I made my way around the house, noticing nothing unusual, until I saw that her boots were missing. She wouldn't have gone far, or at least that's what I told myself at first. But something didn't sit right. Mara had already gathered all the herbs she needed. She'd said so. Everything was drying nicely on the twine above the sink, and the rest of her supplies were tucked away in their usual spots. I looked up at the shelf where she kept her finished soaps. The top row was still lined with the usuals: lavender, oat, rosemary. But the pale grey bars she had me use the other day were gone. I moved closer, squinting. Maybe they'd been moved to the market box. My brain felt fogged over, like thinking through cling film. I touched the shelf, ready to steady myself. Nothing. Not a single bar left. I opened the bin on instinct. Half buried under yesterday's peelings was the linen wrap she used for packaging. The same dotted one she'd used when she first showed me the batch she had folded once, then crumpled, like someone had changed their mind at the last second. I knew where she'd gone, even before I admitted it. I knew. I turned and grabbed the nearest pair of shoes, my head spinning as I bent down, but I shoved them on anyway. The air outside was sharp but warm from the rising sun. That same low mist was back again, thicker near the fields, sticking to my throat with every breath. My legs protested the second I pushed into a run. Cold muscles, leftover fever. I felt wrong, but still, I ran. The trail was soft from last night's rain. I kept slipping, catching myself just before I went fully down. My breathing turned quick and ragged too soon. I followed the curve in the path, past the hedgerow, past the spot I fell before. And then I saw her boot prints in the mud, leading down to the water's edge. I picked up speed, and there she was. Mara stood at the bank, boots muddy, sleeves pushed up. She had both hands out in front of her, offering the soap to the river wives. The woman closest to her lifted her head, and I saw her. Her face was puffed out in places and sunken in others, like it had been soaking too long in the wrong kind of water. A bloated corpse came to mind. Her skin had that grey, puffy look, like you'd seen pictures you wish you hadn't clicked on. Her lips were pulled thin, but puffed at the edges, like they were losing their shape. I opened my mouth to call out, but instead, my stomach turned. The run, the fever, and the sight of the woman all hit me at once. The taste of last night's food climbed back up my throat, and I barely had time to lurch to the side before it came up. I doubled over, retching hard, hands braced to my knees. Bitter, half-digested vomit hit the mud with a wet slap. My eyes watered. The noise, the stench, and the sting in my nose all grounded me and made it worse. I wiped my mouth through the back of my dressing gown sleeve, heart still hammering, chest heaving. And Mara had turned towards me with a concerned look on her face. She didn't have time to say anything. The river wives moved faster than they had any right to. One of them surged from the water in a wet heave, cloth slapping against stone. Mara turned too late. Her hands fumbled, soap slipping from her palms and hitting the rocks. Another one rose behind her, then another and another. They surrounded her, waterlogged limbs coiling around her legs, waist and arms. One pressed a palm flat against her chest. Her boots lost grip and her knees gave. They began to drag their washboards across her back, over her arms, over her scalp, like they were trying to strip her clean. They worked fast. Her clothes came apart at the seams, threads pulled like worms from the stitching. Her skin went with it, peeled back in patches, red blooming and then vanishing under the froth. One of them worked at her wrist until the joint gave a little pop, then twisted. Another opened their mouth wide and bit down on Mara's shoulder like it was bread. The flesh gave. Mara's mouth opened, but no sound came. I forced myself upright. Stumbling forward, my legs didn't want to cooperate. Mara reached out in a last, weak attempt to push away, to reach for me. But then her head went under. Her hair was the last thing I saw of her, fanned out on the surface like ink in water. I finally made myself step forward, and one foot sank into the bank. But I didn't go any further. I couldn't. I was outnumbered. There were too many of them, and whatever they weren't just old bats with bad joints. I threw up again, barely staying upright, still shaking. I could taste it all in my mouth, and the feel of last night's sweat still clinging to my neck. One of them turned slightly in my direction, just enough to let me know she'd clocked me, and I stumbled back weakly, shoes skidding in the mud. My heel caught a root, and I went down hard, hands scraping against the cold, muddied stone as I scurried back on my feet, losing a shoe to the river. And I ran, faster than I'd ever run before. I didn't stop until I hit the edge of the village. My lungs were burning, my chest felt too small. One foot was raw, my socks soaked through, and mud clinging to the back of my legs like tar. I stumbled into the center, wheezing, hunched, eyes scanning for anyone. The first person I saw was the woman from the shop. She didn't flinch. "Your estate," she said instead, eyes flicking to my missing shoe, then the blood and the dirt down my arm. "You went down there, didn't you?" I opened my mouth to speak, but the words weren't ready. My throat closed around them. Behind her, another man leaned out from the post office steps. He took one look at me, then shook his head like he'd seen all he'd needed. "You were warned, son. Better not bring that hassle into town. Either leave or go back and finish what you've started." I shook my head, still breathless, voice barely there. "I need the police. I need someone to..." The woman scoffed. Actually scoffed. "Oh, love, no one's calling anyone. What would they even do? Fill out a form and lose it?" I looked up at her. Mud streaked up my legs, acid in my throat, one shoe gone to the river. I must have looked half mad. "She's gone," I said. It came out dry and it stung. "They took her." The woman from the shop just shook her head. "Then it's done." She looked me over again, but there was no pity in it. "They're not coming for you," she said. "Whatever happened out there, it was between her and them. They don't take much interest in men." She nodded at my state, like that explained it all. "You're not theirs to bother, unless you give them a reason." She paused momentarily, as if deciding whether to waste the time saying the rest. Then she nodded toward the village green. "You can waste your morning reporting it. The police will be down there, poke around with their notebooks, and by the time they do, they won't find a thing. They never do." She shifted her weight and tucked her hands into her cardigan sleeves. "Or you can come inside, sit down and have a cup of tea. Let it settle a bit. Figure out what you want to do next, if anything." I couldn't answer. The clouds had closed in and rain had started again. That fine, soaking kind. She gave me a look that wasn't quite sympathy. Just something like, well, pick. The weeks that followed were slow and quiet in the worst kind of way. The shop lady was right. The police didn't find anything. They looked at me like they knew what was happening, like an adult checking under a child's bed for monsters. They asked me to walk them through it, so I did. The whole thing sounded like a story. One of them nodded like he was listening, but I could tell he wasn't hearing a word and just filling in boxes in his head. They stepped down to the river eventually, boots careful on the edge, like they didn't want to get dirty. One of them crouched and stared at the water for a while, like it might offer something up if he looked long enough. The other paced around with a stick, prodding at the reeds like he would find her folded neatly in the mud, just waiting to be uncovered. They didn't find anything. They knew they wouldn't. I could see it in the way they moved. Slow and half-hearted. In the end, they gave me a number to call and said someone might be in touch if anything came up, though it probably wouldn't. I didn't leave the town. I couldn't. Every room still had her in it, despite our short time here. Her handwriting on labels, her coat on the back of the door, a stupid mug with a chip in the handle she always said gave it character. Some mornings, I'd wake up forgetting, turning to her side of the bed, expecting her weight and warmth, only to be met with a flat sheet and silence. And that's all it took. The silence would drag me back to that day, straight to the mud, the final moments when she reached out. My chest would lock up like someone had stuck their hand inside and squeezed tight, and my hands would shake. Breathing would come out wrong, sharp and fast, like I was choking. Sometimes I'd curl up and try to ride it out. Other times I'd sit up and press my palms to my knees like they might pin me to the moment and anchor me down until the wave passed. It always passed, but it took its time. Some days, I thought I should burn the whole house down with myself in it. But I didn't. The people in town started treating me differently, with nods and cups of tea. The townspeople stopped to ask how I was holding up. They didn't say sorry, not outright, but it was there in the way they helped me. The shopwoman, Hilda, even started saving me the good milk without asking. One of the older men gave me a spare radio, in case the silence ever gets too loud. "You're one of us now," Hilda said, handing me a paper bag of apples without charging. "Everyone loses someone eventually, in one way or another." So I stayed, partly because I had nowhere else to go, and partly because of my debt. Even if I could, the thought of packing up and moving on somewhere else without her made me feel sick. I kept Mara's little shop going under a name, changed the labels on her soap to Mara's Blend, and started selling them at the market. They did well. I messed up a few batches, some trial and error. But before I knew it, they started to smell like hers. It was maybe a month when I realized I was out of yarrow. I'd used the last bit of it on the latest batch. It didn't feel right to stop making one of her best sellers. I thought about asking someone to fetch some for me, but that felt like cheating. So I waited. A few days turned into a week. I kept putting it off, and even tried looking for it in different areas. At one point, I told myself the blend didn't need yarrow, but I knew I was wrong every time I ran my thumb over the label. Mara would have been furious at me for half-arsing something under her name. The thought stuck and grew teeth. I kept seeing her hands, the way she held the bars when they were still curing, her thumb running along the edge. She'd never half-finished anything, not even breakfast. And there I was, letting fear decide what got made and what didn't, letting it whisper that maybe it wasn't worth finishing, maybe I was safer not to. Mara would have seen through that in 2 seconds. She'd have thrown something at me, probably a damp tea towel, and she'd have followed it up with that sharp look she had. The one that said, "Pull yourself together." And she'd have been right. All I did was give the anger space to grow. It started low in my chest and curled around the edges of everything as it festered into the corners of the cottage and onto her side of the bed. Eventually, it boiled up into an idea, one I couldn't shake away, no matter what I tried. That evening, the local pub was lively and dimly lit. A few of the regulars scattered across the low tables, shouting across to each other, cracking jokes. The fire was more glow than flame by now, mostly embers tucked into the grate, flickering just enough to keep the cold off the walls. George, the gent who gave me the radio, sat near the back, half watching darts on the telly. I took the stool next to him, no fuss, and didn't bother with a pint. "You still got that shotgun?" I asked. "Bloody hell," he said after a pause. "You don't start with hello anymore." Didn't feel like chatting. Clearly. He glanced at me suspiciously, like he already knew why I was there. "What for?" "Foxes," I said. "Been getting into the garden. They've dug up half the beds, most of Mara's corner, chewed through all her hard work." That made him pause, and he set his pint down onto the sticky table somberly. "Bloody hell," he muttered. "That patch always looked proper. Never thought foxes would go after herbs." He went quiet at that, brows drawing in a touch, the lines around his eyes settling deeper, as if he were figuring out whether that was the truth or not. "Been hearing that from folks too," he said after a beat. "Not just foxes, badgers and rabbits too. All of them turning up where they shouldn't be. They're bold, like they forgot how to be wild. Don't bolt anymore, just stand and watch you like they're taunting you." I nodded once. That's what they've been doing. He studied me again. "You planning to shoot anything?" "Only if I have to." He let that sit between us for a second, then gave a small nod. "I'll get it to you in the morning," he said. "One day only. Barrel pulls a bit left if you're not paying attention, and it kicks like it's got something to prove, so don't try and be clever." "I won't." Once I had the gun, I set out early. The sky was grey, and the path was soft with last night's rain. The shotgun was wrapped in oilcloth and strapped across my back. I could feel it with every step. Foxes, I'd said. Pests. George must have known. He'd handed me the gun like he understood. He said nothing, but gave me a small nod, the kind that said, "Do whatever you gotta do, mate, but don't come crying after." The fog was thicker this time, proper thick. It clung to the hedges and swirled low across the path. The visibility was awful. The river wasn't even in sight yet. But I could feel it, just around the bend. That damp, cold presence and impending doom. I stopped walking, reached back, and undid the strap. It came free without fuss, oilcloth damp with mist. I unwrapped it slowly, feeling the weight of it in my hands. It felt wrong, like it knew I had no business holding it. My arms weren't made for this. My hands weren't steady. I never handled one before, not properly, not like this. And there I was, alone in the mud with fog at my ankles and a loaded shotgun in my grip, like I knew what the hell I was doing. I broke it open to check the 2 shells. They were right where they were meant to be. And when I clicked it shut, it made a proper sound, clean and final. Then I kept moving slowly. My boots sank a little into the wet ground with each step. I could feel the thud of my heartbeat in my jaw and fingertips. Then I saw it. A figure of a woman standing in the water with her back turned, her dress soaked and clinging to her legs, and her head was wrapped in a scarf pulled tight. Every muscle in me went taut. I raised the gun and flicked the safety off with my thumb, clumsy and stiff. The click was louder than I expected. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The figure reacted to the noise, one foot dragging through the water like she was remembering how to stand. Her body swayed slightly, and every part of me tensed. My arms were locked, and my shoulders tightened. I braced the stock against my shoulder properly, lifted the barrel, and lined it up through the grey. The fog swirled around her, thick as milk, only showing a blur of her. I couldn't see her face, but I knew what this was, what it had to be. One of them. I had seen this before. I knew this shape, this silence, the soaked dress clinging to her legs, sleeves hanging heavy, hair hidden, no part of her left to recognize. She was just another one of them, waiting for her next victim. So I aimed, and just when I had her square in my sights, she spoke. "Did you finally bring those biscuits you promised me?" The words took the ground from under me without warning, and my arms dropped just a little and shook. I couldn't help it. It felt as if the gun had become heavier. Because it was her. It was Mara.
Yeah, call it a stream here.